Good morning. I'd like to call this meeting to order. I don't have a gavel, so I can't pound it, and we don't have an electronic gavel. So I'd like to call to order the meeting of the Golden Rain Foundation Board of Directors, California Nonprofit Mutual Benefit Corporation, Wednesday, July 5th, 9:30 a.m. Here in the boardroom. We have a quorum, and now we'll ask Director Judith Troutman to give us the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
If you are a retired military or active duty military, you can choose to salute the flag instead of putting your hand over your heart. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Judith. We are obviously on TV6, and Emily Rasmussen is here from the Globe. Now, an approval of the agenda, please. Aha. This has got a Bay Juanitas, it's purple. Approval of the agenda? Director Beckett?
I'd like to remove item 11E from the consent calendar.
John, it's my understanding that we all agreed that we would deal with the consent calendar when we get to the consent calendar. We did that in a previous meeting.
Okay.
All right, we're talking about the agenda.
I had forgotten that part.
Okay. All right,
Yeah, I did too. I thought it was the other way around.
I made a
John.
motion to accept the agenda.
thank you. So Director Skirkle made a motion to approve, seconded by, press a button. Okay, whoever came in first.
I have Director Circle made a motion. Director Phelps second the motion.
All right, excellent. All those in favor?
Wait.
Discussion?
I'm trying to remember back, but I thought if there was something on the consent calendar that we wished to discuss, we had to pull it from the agenda at the time we were approving the agenda. No? You're shaking your head no?
No, it should be pulled when you get to the consent calendar, and you'll discuss it under that item. You can't give it a new number and move it somewhere.
Okay.
That doesn't work with this system very well.
Your memory's much better than mine because you're much younger than I, so.
Okay, so I believe we're at the point where we'd like to approve today's agenda. All those in favor, please, we were voting on, remember, we're back to technology, folks.
You got to vote.
Okay. And just during this brief pause, this is our second time dealing with the new technology, so it isn't going to be any prettier than it was the last time.
There we go.
All right. Please commence voting. And remember, when you vote, you should see a little blip, and that square gets smaller so that tells you that you know you voted. And if you don't have that, keep pressing that button. All right.
Wait, this is wrong.
Finish voting. Okay, I'm assuming that it passed.
The motion passed.
Okay, the motion passed. Are we going to see that screen?
We don't know why it didn't show up.
We'll work through it.
Okay, a work in progress. We are now looking at number 5, approval of the minutes. And we have the June 6th meeting. Joan? You usually have found something. Okay, great. Huh? Okay, Judith?
It was just missed. Under maintenance and construction, we moved John Luby as non-voting advisor. He does not want to do that, and we took him off last month. Under maintenance and construction and energy.
That's under the committee assignments.
Sorry. Page 6 of 14. 5A. Thank you.
Okay, are we ready to approve the minutes of the June 6th meeting?
Make mover.
Moved by
Judith,
Judith, seconded by, somebody pressed that
Tom
second.
Circle.
Tom Circle seconded it. So are we going to get a vote screen?
You want to start voting?
Okay, commence voting. Finish voting.
Captain Pressure, please.
I did already.
One,
Did you get a blip?
try, there you go. And then record. And for some particular reason, the record button's not working.
All right,
Well, we're getting the votes over here, though.
okay. So the minutes are approved. Okay, we're already up to item 6, which is report of the chair. And once again, I'd like to remind everybody in the room to make sure that your cell phone has been silenced. All right. And then as I said earlier, we are working with this technology, and someday it will become automatic. We're not there yet. I'd like to sadly report that our community lost a very active member, and that is Bill Blaine, who was the head of the Men's Golf Association, who passed away. And Bill was at our last board meeting. He was with us to show the amount of money that the golf tournament raised. And he was a very, very active member of the community. He represented the golf group faithfully and in a dignified manner. And my experience with Bill was I was out walking my dog one day, and he pulled up in his golf cart and said, "Ah, my least favorite board member."
Should I second that? No.
But I'm happy to say that over a period of time, a period of years, that we developed mutual respect, and he will be sorely missed. And it is my understanding that there will be a celebration of life on July 11th at 4 p.m. at the 19 meeting rooms. And so a sad, left way too soon. For those of you that, Tom, yes?
That is open to all the board, if you'd like to stop by.
Okay.
Thank you.
If you took part in yesterday's festivities for the 4th of July, I think we owe our recreation department a huge round of applause, thank yous. It was, for the first time ever, incredibly well organized. And when you look at the number of staff people who were working on a holiday so that we could have a great 4th of July experience, that never would have happened under PCM in our lifetime. And anybody that stayed to enjoy the fireworks, they were first class. Just very, very. So I think very well done, and I know that those kinds of things involve hours and hours and hours of planning, and no event is ever perfect, but I think they hit about as many marks as you could ever expect to on a first go-round. So good job. I am a resident of United Mutual, and I received in the mail my ballot to approve the newly updated bylaws for United Mutual. And hours and hours and hours, this represent hours and hours and hours by a group of people who went through word by word, section by section to bring those bylaws up to date. And it's very, you're very regulated as to, hey, I just saw the clock. There is a clock. Look to the left of the door. Amazing. But the law dictates when you have an election to change the bylaws, there has to be a certain percentage of the residents that approve that change. And you're rather limited to how you notify a person to vote and do the voting. So this is not only, it represents a lot of time and effort, it's also quite a cost to the United Mutual. So I encourage everyone who lives in United to look in their envelope and return their ballot, preferably with a yes vote, although I don't want to influence your decision. But please get these in if you live in United. Director Beckett.
You mentioned the hours and hours that were spent on this, and one of the ladies who's most responsible for that is sitting in the audience. Her name is Juanita Skillman. I'd like to thank her.
Well, I see Barbara Copley right behind her, and I think Barbara had a few hours in it too. All right, the other thing that I would like to talk about is the Performing Arts Center, which is, I'm sorry, Catherine.
I was just going to suggest you might tell them what percentage of residents need to pass it. I think it's 67%, is it? Or something? What is it then? Because I think it'd be helpful if people have some idea of the enormity of the task to get the approval.
15% of the quorum, which is the number of votes that are returned.
Oh.
To say yes.
Okay, that's a lot easier then.
Right.
Okay.
And then of that 15%, 51% have to vote yes.
Okay.
It comes down to about 700 or 800, but that's cutting it.
Yeah.
All right, we're probably out of order by having
Right.
this discussion from the floor. So we will cease that discussion. The other thing I wanted to talk about is the Performing Arts Center, formerly known as Clubhouse 3. We are quite involved with the architectural firm that was selected for that. And the various groups that use the Performing Arts Center have been contacted, and interviews will begin with the architect and these groups beginning tomorrow. And there will be interviews for 3 days. And the various groups have been contacted. And if for some reason, first check with your group to make sure that they've been notified. If that group has not been notified, then the person that you would contact would be Judith Troutman sitting on my right. But the meetings will be on the 6th, the 7th, and the 10th. And this is to get input from the users of the facility prior to coming up with concepts for the refurbishment of the building. At a later date, once those concepts have been developed, those will be presented to everybody, and there will be another opportunity for input from anybody. So, but right now the consultant prefers to do this interview process with the user groups, and so that is something that's in progress. The other thing, in a spirit of transparency, I never heard about that. Well, on July 13th, we are having a meeting at 1:30 in the afternoon in this boardroom, and the topic of discussion is fees. So we're talking about anytime you have to pay money, we're not talking about assessments. We're talking about things like how much it costs to play golf, how much it costs to park your RV, those sorts of fees. So there will be a presentation on fees that afternoon. And so anybody that is concerned about fees, that is July 13th, 1:30 in the afternoon in this room. And that concludes my comments, and I would like to ask Tom Circle to come forward, and Chief Moy is going to come down. We have a commendation of an employee for outstanding efforts.
Well, good morning, Chair Parker, honorable board members. Thanks for the opportunity to come in front of you today. And first, I just want to thank this board for their support to our security department as it pertains to our staffing, equipment, and all those things that involve keeping our community safe. Appreciate your assistance in this matter. Obviously, in Laguna Woods Village, it's a very safe community. But it is not a fortress, and nor do we intend it to be. And there are times where someone may slip through, and that's where our security personnel, and then of course in partnership with the Orange County Sheriff's Department, comes into play. But we would like to recognize two of our security officers for their outstanding work. Can you hear me okay? On an incident. Would you like me to face the board or the audience?
I think we have cameras in both directions.
Okay, so I take it we're being watched right now. Very good.
And you've got a mic so they can
There
hear
we
you
go.
this
On
week.
June 18th, about 4:40 in the morning, Officer Lupercio, I always struggle with that name, was opening up gate 12. That's 4:40 in the morning. And as he was doing so, a pickup truck came flying through, did not stop, did not attempt to stop. His role, and we call that a gate runner. And that's a problem here in our community. The key for a security officer is to immediately observe and report what occurred. He immediately gets on the radio, calls for assistance. This individual in this pickup truck was driving recklessly through the parking lot on the sidewalks, drove up to Clubhouse 2 on the patio area. Officer Lupercio gets in his vehicle, drives up there while responding units are on the way, makes contact with this individual, notices the person seems to be impaired somewhat. We call it under the influence, but you just don't know at 4:40 in the morning what's going on out there. A brief verbal exchange, doing his job, keeping a safe distance, waiting for backup, doing exactly what we have trained him to do, and the individual gets out and on foot into the community. And that is where our backup officer, Peter DiPartomio, can we just make it like Smith, Jones, Moy? I'm gonna start using their first names here. So we're going to go Peter and Ernesto. There we go. Peter, one of the first responding units, gets out on foot and starts looking around. Ends up locating the individual face down in the mud underneath some bushes, obviously trying to conceal himself and elude capture. We're not sure what's going on at this point. Great work, great observations. I appreciate the fact that they took immediate action, called for backup, maintained a safe distance, got the Sheriff's Department over here. But the Sheriff's Department's dealing with an individual that they didn't see behind the wheel. And through Ernesto's observations, we're able to do that. And not only was a trespasser arrested, but a drunk driver was arrested. And I just really appreciate their work in keeping this community safe. Again, we feel extremely safe here. And part of that is because we've got two outstanding officers doing their part, reaching out, taking that extra step. Sure, they could have just, there's a concept in BSIS, which is called Bureau of Security Investigative Services. They could have just observed and reported and stood their ground. But they chose to take it to the next level within the law, and that's what we asked them to do, within the law and to maintain their safety. Great effort by both our officers. We'd like to call them up. Tom, would you like to say a few words?
Yeah. Peter, Ernesto.
Tom, if you guys pose, you're going to get a picture in the Globe.
Yes.
Maybe.
I would just like to add, my appreciation. I would just like to add my appreciation and the members of the Security Committee and the GRF Board. Great work. It's coming together really well. I'm really, really happy about your efforts and your professionalism. That's what we're going for. So
It was a total team effort out there.
and we in law enforcement know that's what it takes. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Director Beckett.
The training was very important, and I would like to thank Tim Moy for training and making sure all of our officers have that kind of training that they need.
All right, the next item on our agenda is item number 7, which is the update from the VMSI, our president of the VMSI board, Dan Kenny.
You may wonder why I sat over there. If you watch this show on Village Television, you'll notice there is a certain range where everybody's very visible, and that corner you're not as visible. So it's one of those learning processes. We actually have a meeting going on right now, and Marcy has taken over the chair of the meeting. It's one of those unusual things where a holiday causes both of our boards. Typically yours on Tuesday, ours on Wednesday. They're both today. So there's a little bit of a staffing problem, but I noticed that you got pretty much everybody, which is the way it should be. You are probably aware that one of our board members, Joe Rainey, it's his last day on our board, and the reason is that Joe has been appointed as a city council member for Laguna Woods. So he'll be leaving our board, and he'll be a council member, and in fact has already been appointed to 1 or 2 committees with them, and we will miss him greatly. In the meantime, as you know, he was a United representative, and United on their July 11th meeting, they've announced that Dick Rader will be an appointment to our VMS board. So that will happen all on July the 11th. The past month we've done a number of things, and I know some of the members have come to our meetings, so you had an opportunity to observe some of the things that we've talked about. Strategic planning is always right on the very top of our agenda, at least once a month, where we talk about where we are with strategic planning, how we're doing, and those things. We also did a benefit study. I know you were aware that we did a wage and salary study. We also, in this last month, went over a benefit study where we compared how VMS was to 6 other entities, including Leisure World and some of the other communities around here. And it was nice to note that we were, we weren't at the very high end, we weren't at the very low end. We were pretty much where we thought we would be and should be. So that was one of the things that we did. At our meetings once a month, we invite a department head to come in and present us with how the departments are doing, any problems they've had, and things like that. Our last meeting was Bruce Hartley, and we went over general services and how things are going in the community with that. And it's an opportunity for the board members to communicate with the different department heads. As you know, we don't encourage board members to go into the offices and say, "Hi, how are you?" But it's an appropriate time to find out exactly how the departments are doing. A topic that came up that interests quite a few people in the community is full versus part-time resident employees. And so we had a rather lengthy meeting about that, and it was decided to retain the policies and procedures that we currently have. So there was no change done to that. One of the things I asked Lori if she could get me some statistics. We all know it's a busy community, but I don't think, for myself, you realize how busy it is for some of the staff. I know Tim was up here just a moment ago with some of his staff. Between January 1st and July 1st of this year, there have been 17,478 calls for security. I mean, that's a huge amount. I'm used to, cities maybe about the same size that don't experience anywhere near that type of activity. Little things like at our gates, this last month, almost 19,000 gate passes were printed at our gates. So if you've had a friend, a relative come in and they pass it, they're one of over 18,000 that were actually done. Dwelling Live, we're encouraging all of our residents to get involved in Dwelling Live. This past month, there were 3,279 entries by our residents to allow people to come in. We would like to see that up. Our short-term goal is to get it up to around 10,000. You're aware that passes are being redone this month and printed. It's almost hard to believe there have been 98,860 entries into our system that account for gate entries and things like that. So it's been a really busy month. Resident services, we all go into resident services and we will, ask. I've been in there a couple of times this month myself. In the past 3 months in resident services, we've had 48,740 visits. It's incredibly busy, and we understand that there are people who have wait in line and aren't real thrilled about it. So you may have noticed some of the amenities that have been brought forward. You can get a cookie while you're there. You can you can have a glass of water. No beer yet, but we're working on that one. So I mean, it's a busy community, and for a community of 18,000, it puts a great strain on all the different staff, and I think staff does really, really well. And I agree with John. The event yesterday was very, very well done. Brian, Lori, and the staff that put that together, it was tremendous. For a first-time event, to have it go as smoothly. I mean, it's little things like having someone there at the stoplight or the light, adjusting when the light will do it. It was actually an unbelievably smooth event. And, well, thank you very much. That should do it. I did ask Lori for one statistic, but she didn't get it for me, and that was how many martinis were served at the 19th hole, but maybe next time. Mm-hmm. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dan.
Yes, Judith.
Yeah, I have a question. I'm not sure if I heard this correctly in the beginning of your report. Did you say board members and directors are discouraged from going into the department head's office for business issues without an appointment?
Well,
you need an appointment now?
Yeah, I think code of conduct, at least for VMS, and that is, we try to go through the proper channels. We have a CEO that's responsible for that. We have a community manager, and we try to do is have people not go in and micromanage what they are doing.
You're speaking of VMSI directors, not GRF board directors or third.
No, I think, from my perspective, pretty much all board members have to understand that.
Okay, we probably need to have a class on that or something.
Yes.
Because that's different. Okay, thank you.
And things really have changed. I think if you'll notice, there have been rather dramatic changes in the way we all go about what we're doing. Thanks. Have a great meeting. Ooh.
Catherine?
Yeah, Dan, I think it's important for the community to understand that when you're using this references relative to the busyness, that you were the mayor of Laguna Beach at one point, which has, 30,000 people? And 29,000, and a budget much less than ours.
Correct.
And it's a surprise to anybody who's been participating in municipal government to find how much activity this community has relative to what their experience, and I'm sure Brad can say the same thing coming from a city of over 200,000 and a county, the county of Sacramento. This really is a very unique situation and challenges anybody who's trying to operate this community effectively for the residents. And I just wanted to give people
Right.
a benchmark as to
Right.
how you really can make the comparison because of your prior experience.
Yeah, it is truly amazing. Laguna Beach has a budget of around $67 million. You obviously know what ours is, which is closer to the 100 mark. And we have roughly 1,000 employees. Laguna Beach probably has 370. So, I mean, it really is a dramatic impact that VMS makes on everything here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dan. Director Beckett?
Well, I agree with Mr. Kenny's comments that we should go through the proper channels. But when it comes to micromanaging, I think I have to point out that it really is our duty as directors to put our nose in things, and we really have the right to access to all the records and all the information. Thank you.
Well, John, you're well aware that we have a protocol which we expect people to follow. It's nothing about access to information, it's about a protocol. The next item on our agenda is our CEO report. Brad?
Thank you, Honorable President, members of the board, members of the community. It's my pleasure, as always, usually on a Tuesday, today on a Wednesday, to speak with you about things that are going on. I don't want to beat the fourth event too hard, but it was a very well-planned, collaborative effort. And I did want to not leave out Bruce Hartley and the General Services folks. They're kind of off the radar, behind the scenes folks, but they're the ones who make things work. And in terms of custodial and all the traffic measures, all the little things that you don't notice unless they're done wrong. And so I did want to thank him and his team, as well as Lori Moss and Brian Gruner and their respective teams and the work that they've performed to make that happen. A lot of interesting things going on, and I know we're going to talk about this later, but we're pretty much finalized with the internet package, and so residents, if they choose, can start enjoying triple their current bandwidth at no additional cost. And in order to do that, you need a DOCSIS 3 modem. And so to get that modem and that upgraded service at no cost, then you need to call West Coast Internet and tell them what bandwidth you'd like to have and the cost relative to that, which would be no increase unless you choose to. And then they'll come and provide you with the new modem to allow you to access that additional speed. So want to thank GRF for allocating resources to do some upgrades to our system. The lasers for the narrowcasting project, which made this extension and these services available to our residents. So really a win-win-win for everyone, and pleased to be involved in that. We're also want to put that same fine touch to our cable service, and so we have a number of projects going in that regard, starting with the satellite dish. Stop by. If any of you have an RV in RV lot, is that 2? Yeah, over by the head-end building, you'll see there's a big hole out there, and they're pouring the footings for, which are quite substantial, by the way, for the dish, which will be arriving at some point, or maybe it's already here, but it hasn't been put in place yet. So
I think it's coming next week.
It's coming next week.
Seeing the project log.
Yeah, there was a fairly substantial hole in the parking lot when I was there, where they're pouring the concrete to create a stable base for the satellite dish. So we anticipate that's going to be an upgrade, as well as some of the other things we're doing inside the head-end building to improve the service. And then with another couple of tweaks we want to make later in the year, we're hoping to roll out a really awesome DVR box for residents that is really state-of-the-art, and it's going to bring them up to speed in terms of what you see out in other communities. So we're very excited about that as well. And then we have an ongoing project to provide some maintenance to our vaults and our nodes, and to make sure the backbone infrastructure for both our internet and cable are appropriately maintained. So that's going on. Some of the things you'll be seeing out in the community, starting with Clubhouse 1, we've got those planters that have been falling down for years, and we always prop them back up and they fall back down. They're being removed and replaced with concrete block with actually steel and concrete in them. Those are completely unreinforced block walls that are just being pushed down by the landscaping there. So we'll put something a little stouter in there, stucco it and have it match the building. It's going to look nice, and people can sit on it without fear of falling over. So we're excited about that. We have a lot of minor maintenance projects going on in a number of the clubhouses. One that got a little of attention last week, I think we sent a blast out that said we're going to tent Clubhouse 4, which is long overdue. And a lot of and we said in August, this is in August, but a lot of residents didn't get to the August part, and so they were clearing out their lockers and, you know, thinking they were going to miss their class. No, it's in August. We've scheduled around the classes, so everybody should be fine. But again, we did a lot of dry rot work there earlier in the year. Now to come in and tent, I think will be a nice add to the maintenance. And then we have a whole roof kiln project that's going on there as well that shouldn't be too disruptive, but you'll be seeing some action on that as well. We're not quite ready to move on this yet, but in Clubhouse 5, we're looking at doing the kind of a multi-purpose room in the old billiard room, and so we anticipate some additional construction over there as we add appropriate flooring and mirrors and sound and all the things you would want in a room like that. So we're very excited about that as well. You'll be seeing, usually in July, August, we do our paving program. It's a summer activity, always is, everywhere. And so you'll be getting notified, those of you who need to not park on the road or get out of the way for our paving crews who are mostly doing slurry seals. There might be a few reconstructions and some crack seals and different things. But we'll notify you when your area will be worked on, so you'll have more than enough time to move out of the way and let us get that done. One of the things I think we've done here on occasion is let residents back on the roads too soon. And when that happens, the slurry gets pushed around, and it's quite unsightly. And so I've asked Ernesto to take a look at that and make sure that we're getting adequate curing on that material before we let residents get back on that. And then we've got a couple of gate changes here in the roadway. Now, 7 was completed a couple months ago, but you probably noticed a restriping there. Actually, I think it was just a mistake during the construction. They gave the U-turn the predominant right-of-way and instead of emerging right-of-way. And so we changed that so the through traffic now has the right-of-way. So that's changed. And then we have another change coming at Gate 5, where the right-hand lane will be a dedicated right now and not a through lane. So that's a bit of a change, should make that intersection work much, much better. So we're looking at all those. I get a lot of comments from residents when they think something's not right, particularly with anything to do with traffic, here very quickly. And so on those two circumstances, they were right. Those really weren't initially installed properly, and so this is going to be a big improvement there. And then we have a little bit of work going on over at the Par 3 course in the starters building, where we're cleaning that up a little bit, adding some more retail there, and really we're making a pretty big commitment to the Par 3 course in terms of making that a really special venue. And I looked at the numbers on that. There's a surprisingly large number of rounds that get played on that. I think it's over 40,000 a year. That seemed like a big number. And so we want to have nice facilities there so before and after people can relax and lie about their game. Talk about their game. Anyway, so we're very excited about that. And then probably in the coming weeks, you'll start seeing a little bit of work at gatehouses at 8 and 9 as we kind of clean those up a little bit in anticipation of future construction next year that will add the gatehouse technology. So just real small cleanup projects, not real big stuff, but good stuff for the community. And I know staff is very excited to work on these, and as probably as excited to work on them as the community is to enjoy the benefits of them. So with that, I'd answer any questions that you might have.
Director Beckett.
I have a question about this notice we got from the city. It says that Golden Rain filed an application for a general plan amendment and a zoning code amendment. And I was wondering, what is our practice in terms of notifying the members when we file such an application?
Yeah, this goes back, I think, a few years.
It goes back at least 3 years. And in addition to that, there was a public notice in the paper.
Yeah, the way this came around, and I know Lori and I tinkered with this a bit when we first got here, is that was going to be a standalone GRF application, but the cost of that was, you know, like hundreds of thousands of dollars to do a zone change. Basically, eliminating some of the commercial designation and making it more recreation and open space, which I think is a desirable thing, and most members of the community would say that's a good idea. And so we knew the city was going to do their own, by law, they must update their general plan occasionally. And so we asked them just to, instead of having this be standalone, to put it in with their general plan work. And so I think that reduced the cost of that several times. The objectives stay the same. All the requests from GRF stay the same. But the cost is much, much less because it's done as part of the grander general plan effort. So I think it's all good stuff. We tried to explain that in an e-blast. I thought it was pretty clear, but if you haven't worked on city general plans before, it may not be clear. So if anybody has a concern or a question, they can certainly contact my office. I'd be glad to discuss it with them.
Well, if you go back to the history of this thing, 3 years ago, there was a major shift on the membership of the GRF board. And the development-driven members of the board were no longer the majority. And so that is when the GRF board began working with the city so that all of our unused open land is designated open or recreation, where previously some of it was zoned commercial, which was very tempting to some of our development-driven board members. And so this kind of finally dealt with that issue. And so this is like just the dotting the i's and crossing the t's as far as the legality of the land use plan. Catherine, did you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I was involved at the time 3 years ago when this was being brought, and it actually goes back even further than that, almost 5 years ago, where there was a session. Remember, GRF at one point had paid almost $1 million to a consultant that was basically making recommendations, and their argument was over that if we didn't zone certain ways, we'd lose the traffic opportunities and, you know, the daily trip thing. And turns out that when you really start investigating this, a lot of that's not true. And we did have, all the boards had combined, because I was on Third Mutual at the time, and we had all the boards involved, and we spent a lot of time talking about, and the conclusion from the boards were, at that point, that all of the unused, 67 acres, I believe it is, that's unused, should be zoned open space recreational, except for the area where we have the maintenance area, and that's going to have to be zoned differently, and you'll see in the planning notice that that's classified as a maintenance area for the private community. And so this is something that takes, I mean, look how many years I'm talking about. 5 or 6 years, and we're finally getting to the point where the general plan, and it was through Brad and his people, because most of us are not used to the kinds of costs, because we were going to have the city last year, just update and change all that zoning. Most of us didn't realize the cost in doing that, and so Brad and Lori basically suggested, look, we'll just put this as part of what the city's going to do. It'll be far less costly for us. And so it's really confirming that which we have been working on. And I agree that it's hard, because I spotted it in the Globe when they had the public meeting, and I immediately cut it out and said, it didn't really describe what I understood to be the case, and I had already checked on it. And so, exactly, this is just confirming all the work that we did over the last 5 years. So,
Well, we tried to put the email into more plain language. I hope we captured the essence there.
Well, if you've ever been a teacher, you've got to say the same thing 3 different ways. Director Beckett?
So the designation, residential community, actually includes recreation, is that right?
Yes.
Oh, okay, thank you.
All right, thank you, Brad. Now we are at the open forum. And so this is a time when any member may speak on to items that are not on the agenda. And we are timing this, so you have 3 minutes. And we ask that you please state slowly your name and manor number so that the secretaries can record that. So,
Gary Morrison, 107R Via Estrada. And I think first I want to compliment Brian, Lori, and the staff that put on the fireworks, everything that went on last night. I thought it was very impressive and very well done. And next, I guess I want to say something about the 19th hole and the 75,000 that I'm hoping that you all will vote to do that, because I think it's important that we keep up the 19th hole. And in addition to that, the one complaint that I hear from there is that
excuse me, Director, but the 19th hole is on the agenda.
So am I not allowed to talk about
Well,
it?
essentially, the appropriate time is when we're dealing with that.
All right, so this, are you going to take some of this time off of when I,
Just
next
keep-
time?
That's right.
Good morning. My name is Tony Dower, 96C, Cali, Aragon. I have not complaints, but suggestions, so I hope you'll take it that way. I was wondering, in the interest of saving money, when I worked in the industry, if they could spend money and get that money back because of the cost-saving thing within 2 years, they would do it. I was just wondering, we've really actually got some wonderful-looking, real, artificial grass, and that would save a lot of water on stuff. Speaking of water, sorry, ladies, but I've been in the Clubhouse 3 urinal, and it's like a waterfall when you leave the urinal. And there are waterless urinals. They're made by a company, Moan, M-O-A-N. I've been in Arizona and in Michigan where they're standard practice to have these. I don't know how they can work without any smell, but they're waterless urinals. And if you could spend $100 to save $100 in a couple years, I think it'd be worth it for each one. Also, I wanted to compliment you on the wonderful fireworks show. I love watching Ken on Channel 6, and they had a big celebration with music and everything yesterday. I didn't want to go through that hassle after hearing all that stuff. I made the mistake of not going to Clubhouse 2. Instead, me and about 100 other people went to Clubhouse 4, where we watched the fireworks, which was nice. Could I suggest that they do it a little bit slower? That's the fastest 15 minutes of fireworks I've ever seen. They kept shooting them off 2 or 3 at a time, and I would hope that they could spread them out a little bit more. The show would last longer, and it would be prettier. On my way home, I noticed that Laguna Hills or someplace to the south was still shooting fireworks at 9:30, and I got home just in time to catch the Macy thing. Macy show was a joke until the last half hour when they actually showed the fireworks instead of entertainment. Okay. I'm hoping that after I've lived here over 10 years, I've heard year after year, we're going to renovate Clubhouse 3, Performing Arts Center. We're going to do all kinds of things. And I said, why don't you start with that ugly floral carpet you got in there? That carpet's been there since the 60s, it looks like. So please, put a nice brown carpet like the one in the pool room or in the office. And let's see. Oh, by the way, there was a news article about somebody in a, okay, and the propane tanks are dangerous. And second, I want to ask you to consider putting a door in the wall to get people through that are handicapped to the dog park by Clubhouse 4. Please consider handicapped people getting there. And this yellow card came in the mail, And this yellow card is trying to
Thank you,
get you
Tony.
to report your
Thank you,
social security
Tony.
number. Thanks.
I'm Chris Collins, 3306Q. I'm here representing the Foundation of Laguna Woods Village. Good morning, and we of the Foundation of Laguna Woods Village want to thank all of the donors who made the Foundation's Spring Appeal such a success. Your donations make the Foundation motto, Neighbors Helping Neighbors, a reality. The many thank you notes received by the Foundation underscore the importance of your donations and the temporary financial assistance that is provided by the Foundation to village residents. Excuse me. Here are several examples of gratitude that have been written by resident recipients, and I quote, "After undergoing multiple hospital stays and confronted with overwhelming medical bills, one neighbor recently wrote, 'How fortunate we are to have an organization such as the Foundation that we can turn to for help with unexpected situations.'" Another resident wrote, "Once again, I'm very grateful for the help the Foundation and social services have given me for my own war on poverty. My income, other than Social Security, continues to shrink, and my health insurance, my manor payments, care insurance, etc., continues to go up, so your help is indeed appreciated." Additionally, there was another project that I'd like to just mention. With newly donated donations, the Foundation has launched a new library pilot program to offer additional assistance to visually impaired residents. We have provided funds to purchase 25 new books on tape as well as new CD players for the village library. So thank you so very much, and thank you for all of your hard work as well.
Thank you, Chris.
Good morning, Maxine McIntosh, 68C. I have two simple requests. One, could we please have a sign put on or near this door that members coming to the meeting, however you want to word it, should use the other doors? A lot of people are still coming to this door. Probably since this building was completed, that door has never been locked, so it'll take a while for everyone to get used to it. And it's tempting, when it's right here by the members, it's tempting to get up and let people in, and then that diminishes the purpose of keeping it locked. So maybe we could have a little sign posted there to please use the other doors. And the other request is about receiving the guest pass that we're all entitled to have. We fill out the form, we turn it in. And I was at a very nice, large neighborhood 4th of July party yesterday in the middle of the day. And I was moving around from group to group and umbrella to umbrella, trying to make people consider voting yes on the United packet. And I was frequently hearing people talk about how they receive those guest passes that they've applied for each year. And one of them said, "Oh, you go down to the gatehouse and they'll print them all off for you." And someone else said, "No, you still need to turn in a self-addressed stamped envelope." And someone else said, "No, I understand they're mailing them out to us this year, whether you return in the envelope or not." So maybe we could have just a little clarity, as John said, one more time that might be helpful to the community. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Sally Sunderhouse. I live at 580 Unit O. I want to thank you as normal about all your
Slowly,
hard-
Sally, slowly.
Oh,
Our
I'm
secretary
sorry.
is not a Steve.
Sally, Sally, Sunderhouse, Sunderhaus, 580 Unit O. I'm standing up here to talk about heated indoor swimming pool. I probably wouldn't have done that, but I do get a little tired in these meetings of hearing these sort of quasi-snarky comments about the old development-oriented board or whatever it was. I was one of the people in this community who was supportive of the $14 million recreation master plan, and I sit and watch the months and years go by where we spend $7 million on this clubhouse, $1 million on pickleball, $500,000 here, $1 million there. Someday it might actually add up to $14 million, but we still won't have a heated indoor swimming pool. We'll still have a parking mess at Clubhouse 1 for those of us who go there for our classes. And that's all. I will say that I was actually on a committee a couple of years ago of GRF board members who were supposedly doing a survey about trying to do something about heated indoor swimming pool. And one of those board members, who's no longer on this board, not only did not swim, but doesn't even know how to swim. So I would welcome it if someday this board would actually take a good, serious look at that issue by people who might actually be interested. Thank you.
All right, the member comments appear to be complete. So hit your speakers list, and I see Judith Troutman.
Oh, well. I only have one response to Sally. As you know, I also supported that capital plan. I do have fibromyalgia, and water therapy is one of the best things for it. However, for $14 million, we're getting 2 clubhouses, Clubhouse 2 and 3, almost completely re-renovated. So trust me, with me on the board, hopefully for another 3.5 years, 4.5 years, I will be trying to get us some kind of an indoor pool. But we have to look at needs versus wants. Thank you.
Director Beckett.
I'd like to respond to Tony Dower, who said, talked about these waterless urinals. I saw a sign in one of these high-rises and showed how many gallons, thousands of gallons of water each one of these things saves. And so I think they're worth investigating. And one more thing, I'd like to thank Tony for his service on the United Board and ask those who are interested in serving our community to please run for the board. Thank you.
Diane.
I just wanted to tell Tony, I don't think that it's all our dog park. Isn't it owned by the city of Laguna Woods? So he might want to go to their meeting and talk about the handicap access.
Well, Tony, this has been a quest of Tony's for years. It's almost a broken record. And he is not talking about...
It's a new record to me, so, okay.
He's not talking about, it's our wall.
Oh, got it.
So if you're going to make a cut in the wall, and the last figure I saw to accomplish that is $36,000. That is not our facility, and there is handicap access via Rockfield. Not a dialogue, not a Ridge Route, correct, sorry. Started with an R. Okay, Ray.
As to the people coming in, my son and daughter-in-law came in last week. They removed the pass, the existing pass that they had, and gave them a brand new one at that point in time. They hit it with some type of device. Maybe that should be explained, and that would take care of Maxine's situation. But that's exactly what happens. They take it away and give you a brand new one at that point in time.
Brad.
Thank you. I wanted to respond to Maxine's comments, and I've been on TV and we've sent out e-blasts, and it's always another opportunity to reach folks. For years, you sent your 5 stamped envelopes into us. We hired temporary staff and put them in a room to do the passes and mail them out, and it was about $100,000 exercise to do that. We don't do that anymore. So now what you do is either go on Dwelling Live, either through your desktop or mobile application, and enter your annual guest pass users in there, and then when they show up at the gate, they will get their pass. Now, if you don't like to do it that way, you can just call in to Resident Services. They will enter your guests over the phone, and once again, when your guests show up, they will hand them their pass. And if they present with an older pass, they'll exchange that, as Ray said, for the new pass. So, all these passes now can be accessed right at the gate when they come to utilize it for the first time in the new year. So, hopefully, this will be a very smooth process. We have had really very few problems, other than some folks are used to doing it the old way, and they haven't acclimated to calling up and just entering their annual guest pass holders through Resident Services.
Oh, sorry. Well, I'm not, I just went there. Okay, sorry. Yeah. Actually, and this was, it was, when Dan was talking with us, he talked, there was only like 3,000 people that are using Dwelling Live. And that's really the simplest way. I know I was a little reluctant in the beginning, but now I have it on my cell phone. I have it, so it's easy. And if you have people that you want to allow permanently in, like family members, you go into Dwelling Live and list them there. They're already there. So when they come to visit, they can get the permit when they come in at the time. And if you're having people come in on a one-day basis, then, which occasionally I'll have, then you go in, and I did it last week on my cell phone. I didn't have to be at home to do it, and go in, and I issue in there. I've got somebody coming the next day. I put their name in and hit the button and just say, this is a person for one day. And so when she arrived at the gate, the pass was issued to her for the day, and with the address of coming to my location. And so it really is easy. And as Dan said, the goal is to get, if we can get 10,000 people out of our community to be using it, it's going to reduce the number of phone calls that we're basically having, which is the goal for our community. When we're looking at the budgets and we're trying to control costs, the most effective way of doing that is, in fact, doing those things that allow us to raise our productivity. And the productivity we're really talking about, because we can't focus, in my opinion, too much on the productivity in landscaping or maintenance, because carpenters take a certain amount of time to do the work. But in the office and administrative area is the area you can really gain a return from making the investments. And that's what the GRF board has been doing, with staff, is focusing on, let's get the productivity up by the supporting staff. And you do that by implementing software. And in that process, if we can get them to residents, and I know it's more difficult because we're older and many of us aren't as electronically set up, but it'll help. And that's the whole purpose of what we're doing. That's the purpose of putting in Dwelling Live. And that's the whole purpose of just what we've done here in this boardroom. I mean, I've heard people complain, well, my God, you guys spent a lot of money redoing the boardroom. The purpose of redoing the boardroom, and as you're beginning to see with the new software, I mean, now anybody who wishes to can actually get committee agendas on the internet with all the attachments. You can get this board pack on the internet by going to the village website. These were things that just weren't possible even a year ago. And so it's really up to the residents now, as we're trying to improve the communication and the transparency, to take advantage of that which is being provided to you. We all gain if we all are willing to make that change. So that's my comment.
Ray?
Yeah, real quick. At the gate system, again, on 2 different occasions, several of our people have come in, and the gate ambassador would not allow them to come in until they gave the last name. I called in on that, and it's been taken care of at this point in time. I do believe we have not had a repo, but that may have happened to other people. That gentleman right there and Lori, they take care of these things. When you make in a call, complain about it, it's done. There's not been another occasion since, but it was absolutely 3 different times. Thank you.
Okay, Tony Dower, there is nothing cheap about artificial turf. It is incredibly expensive, and there is quite a preparation process that is not simple either, and then it's held down with staples and various devices. So the other issue with artificial turf, and we're talking hundreds of acres if we ever did it, but it retains heat like crazy. In fact, if you go to the dog park, which at the city, they have artificial turf, and there is an odor there. But in addition to that, the dogs don't want to walk on it when it's hot. It's just, it holds heat. So artificial turf has a place in small, but it certainly does not have an application in this village when we have hundreds of acres of turf. However, that might sound. Excuse me, it's not a dialogue. And then dwelling live is the simplest thing to do. You don't have to be a techie at all. If you can click onto your computer, period, go to dwelling live, you put in the names of all the permanent people that you do year after year. You don't even have to change it. It's good for longer than a year. It is by far the simplest way to deal with gate access. So it's just too simple to not use. It's way better than waiting for somebody on the phone and I think we choose people that are hard of hearing to man our phones. Then on the indoor pool, there are 2 indoor pools very close to our community. There's one at LA Fitness right across the freeway on Alicia. There is another one at the 24-Hour Fitness. All you'd have to do is go straight down Moulton. And I see people shaking their heads, but this community has existed for over 50 years without an indoor pool. And the minute you have an indoor pool, it's going to be, if we cover one of the existing pools, it's going to be, well, that's pool 6, and I live at 1, and it's too far. And if anybody's ever really dealt with an indoor pool, the chemical odor that you're on a public use pool, you have to use chemicals at a different level than you would use at a private pool. So in a closed environment without great ventilation, that odor becomes an issue. So Judith may be in favor of an indoor pool. I feel that we have much, much greater priorities for the use of our funds. And we keep the water at a temperature. There are swimsuits that you can get that cover more of the body. And people always bring up the wonderful aspects of water exercise. We have pools. You can do water exercise. What you don't, the necessity, in my opinion, is not being covered. So that's my personal feeling on it, and for what it's worth. Okay, we are now at the consent calendar. And at our agenda prep meeting, we had a quorum, which means that there were only 6 of us. And so that means that 5 people were not present when we went through the agenda prep. And the other thing that has happened since then is some items have been added. So before anybody makes any motions on the consent calendar, I would like to just go through briefly each item and kind of explain what we're dealing with on the consent calendar. So 11A is to entertain a motion to approve a contract for the Laguna Woods social media and reputation management for the amount of $25,000 and to authorize the CEO to execute the contract. This was discussed extensively in media and communication, and the original proposal was for the 5 remaining months of this year plus all of next year. And the decision was made in the media and communications to give this a trial run. In other words, let's see how effective it is. And essentially what this does is it monitors things like Facebook. And it lets us know what people are putting on Facebook, and so that we can respond and react appropriately. Currently, it's being done by a staff person, and it's overwhelming. And I equate this to, if anybody's ever worked in an environment where there was a clipping service. Years ago, one of our major sources of information were newspapers. So anytime an entity was mentioned in a newspaper, a clipping service would immediately, make that available, so you knew what was in the print media regarding your entity. And in essence, this is the same thing in a modern age. So what we're asking for here is simply an approval of a 5-month trial run to see, the benefits of having this, and so that's item 11A. 11B is to entertain a motion to change TV6 to Village Television. And as Brad has mentioned at numerous times, TV6 doesn't properly reflect our channel anymore because we actually have 4 channels. We have 406 and TV6, and there's another one, I can't remember. And if you look at most of your television guides, it's National Geographic Channel, Lifetime Channel. The number recognition is kind of passé in the industry. So making this Village Television is more current, and it's probably more representative of where our station is at in its development at this point. So that's 11B. 11C, what we're doing here is we're saying that all the candidates that are going to run for the different boards would have an opportunity essentially to film their candidate statement. And in addition to being filmed at the candidate station, they will probably be asked a question, which they would respond to. The same question, each person. And the Village Television will make times available for that filming to occur. And then those will be shown many times prior to the election of that mutual. And the logic here is to allow people to become better known in their respective mutual or the community. And the idea is to perhaps alleviate the costs that some people spend on running for office and to use our facility as a way of letting a candidate be known by the people who will have to vote for that person. It's not any kind of an endorsement, and anybody that would be running for those positions, this would be available to them. So that's what that item is about. The next item is something that we do on an annual basis. We're required to put in a letter of credit in the amount of $300,000 with the Bank of America, and this is one of the conditions for our workman's compensation insurance. And people get nervous that we're giving Bank of America too much control over our funds. So if you will remember, we passed a resolution last year, January 8th, 2016, and essentially it only obtaining a letter of credit with Bank of America in the amount of $300,000 for workman's comp. Any loans pursued would require a 2/3 vote of the board of directors. So any misuse of those funds for any other purpose other than workman's comp has already been covered by Resolution 90-16-05. So there shouldn't be any question on this as a consent item. And then the last thing, and there's a resolution that goes along with this, essentially we appropriated in the business plan last year $60,000 to put cameras into Clubhouse 5. That has been accomplished, the cameras are there, and there was a balance of about $30,000. What we're doing here is we're taking that extra $30,000 back, unused, and we're appropriating it to the refurbishment of the studio facility for Village Television. So we're taking it out of this pocket and putting it into that pocket, and that's what this is dealing with. So those are the items on the consent calendar. So with that knowledge and information, I'm asking for a motion to approve the consent calendar. All right. Okay, the motion was made by Director Beckett, seconded by, now let's get the motion, then we can discuss it. Are you seconding it, or you want to talk about it?
I want to talk.
Okay, well, let's, hang on.
I have a motion from Director Circle and a second by Gross.
Bye.
Gross.
Okay, all right, now I have speakers that want to talk, and so Richard, you're first.
Yes, I'd like to talk about item 11A. A well-informed member of this community sent out an email requesting that the GRF board discuss this issue. And I know it's been approved by CAC, but we never discussed this issue.
Well,
As
the
a
board didn't discuss
as
it,
a board.
the committee did. So
So-
you want to move 11A off the consent calendar?
Yes.
Okay. Well, that is the rule. Any director may remove an item from the consent calendar. So Richard is removing 11A from the consent calendar, and that goes to, where does that move now? And that resident was at that meeting of
So
the
probably
committee.
13D.
All right. Okay, I now have on my speakers Director Beckett.
I'd like to remove 11D, please.
Are you serious?
Yes, I'm dead serious.
All right, so moved.
13E.
13E. Judith?
I just want to be able to read the resolution for 11E. Now, could I do that now, or wait and take it off to be able to read that resolution?
No. I mean, we either approve it as part of the consent or it gets pulled.
Because I was given this and told I had to read it. Is that true?
You can waive reading of that resolution if you'd like.
Then I waive reading it.
Okay. All right, so you're not pulling 11E.
No.
All right.
I just told I had to do this.
Okay, Joan?
I just want to clarify 11C. In the description, it says that each candidate will be interviewed. They will not. Every candidate will simply have the opportunity to give their statement and the answer to the question. As a part of a group, they will be part of United or part of Third candidates. All the candidates will be, as a group, will be introduced by someone from the village, however. So that's all I wanted to clarify.
This is not the candidates forum, and in candidates forum, questions are asked. This is essentially a video candidate statement, just like each candidate puts in a statement when they put in their application to run for a different board. Okay, so I now have, with the removal of items 13A and E, 11A, I can't read my own writing, and
D, A and D.
A and D.
D as in David or B as in boy?
D is in David.
Okay,
I thought it was B as in boy.
yeah. 13A and 13D, then I'm asking for approval of the remaining items on the consent calendar.
I have a motion in there.
All right, Judith? It has been moved, the approval of the consent calendar has been moved by...
As amended.
By Judith Troutman and Tom Circle, second.
All right. So we are now voting on the approval of the amended consent calendar. All those in favor, please commence voting.
We're capturing all the votes, so don't worry.
Okay. And commence vote, or complete voting.
I'm missing a vote from Richard Palmer.
She wants you to press it again.
And,
You
and
gotta do
Director
it.
Freshley, I don't have a vote from you.
Yes, yes.
No,
Okay, here we go.
I do now. Thank you.
You got it now.
When you hit that button, you should see a little blip, almost like a drop of water, and then that square gets smaller. And unless your screen reads that way, the vote hasn't been recorded.
It came out unanimous.
Okay.
How come we're not getting it today? A glitch?
The
It's
screen's
locked.
not working.
We have problems.
Okay.
We have technical problems.
Technology problems.
However, we do have, the votes are being recorded. We're just not getting them on the screen. Okay. Okay, we are now. Director
I
Becca.
just wanted to point out that the screen that I just voted yes on, I don't think it had the same names for the mover and the seconder as you just mentioned.
We'll compare against it.
Yeah. All right, we are now on item 12A, which is Kurt going to be here?
I don't see him there, but I'm available if you have questions.
All right. This is to entertain a motion to approve the required Aliso Creek mitigation for the amount of $82,000 and authorize the CEO to execute. And Judith?
Whereas the Chambers Group was hired in December 2015 to manage biological monitoring and surveying for compliance with the HMMP. And whereas the area adjacent to the new footbridge on the downstream side of Aliso Creek falls under the Habitat Mitigation and Monitoring Plan, HMMP, this plan is designed to restore the riparian vegetation. And whereas winter storms cause significant erosion and plant loss to the mitigation area. These reported cycles of damage make it apparent that successful completion of the HMMP goal to fully established riparian vegetation within 5 years is beyond staff's control. Additionally, the erosion damage has undermined the sidewalk and a small portion of each end of the bridge. The necessary repairs require additional habitat mitigation, and now therefore be it resolved, permits and the purchase of habitat restoration, credits for current improvements and ongoing maintenance when needed of the project area in the amount of $80,222 are required, as well as permanent improvement to the bridge area in the amount of $30,000. And resolve further that on July 5th, 2017, GRF approved a supplemental appropriation not to exceed $110,222 to be funded from the Facilities Fund and authorized the CEO to execute necessary contracts. And resolve further that the officers and agents of this corporation are hereby authorized on behalf of the corporation to carry out the purpose of this resolution. I move we accept this resolution.
Seconded by Joan Millman. And Lori, would you please do the staff report?
Yes, this is a very exciting project because we're able to make mitigation repairs there, which were not successful with just the planting as required originally when the Chambers Group submitted that to the wildlife and state agencies, federal and state wildlife agencies. Now we're participating in a mitigation bank, which is very common nowadays for projects that disturb habitat area. And so by banking up to $50,000 of various types of credit as shown on Exhibit A, we're able to do the mitigation and then also continue doing mitigation work in that area in the event of other storms that may occur. Now, at the same time, we're asking for funds to make improvements to the bridge, which we will hope make it so that we don't have further water damage in the event of large storms. So it's a very exciting project. We're going to be happy to get that done, happy to get rid of the sandbags along the creek and quit getting some of those phone calls. So I'm available if you have any questions.
I just had one question, or a comment, is that on the second paragraph defines what HMMP means, and normally wouldn't we put that in the first paragraph? It was just like, as to Scribner's.
Okay.
And the other thing is that in the fourth paragraph, you mentioned ongoing maintenance. And just as a point of clarification, I think that if it is something that is maintenance and shouldn't be taken out of the facilities fund, then it will be something that will get paid out of our regular operating fund.
Okay, we will make that correction to paragraph 1, and then I'll chat with Betty about the other
Exact-
item.
yeah.
Okay.
Okay, Director Beckett?
My question was also about the funding. I'm not sure if we are allowed to take this money out of the facilities fund, and I hope we'll properly take it out of the operating fund. Thank you.
We do everything properly, John. I trust our staff.
It's our job to supervise the staff.
Director Freshley?
Yeah, this may be confusing to many residents. But you know, when we had, this goes back to 2010, when we had all the heavy rains and we lost that bridge. It's unfortunate at that time we just didn't replace the bridge as it was. Because this has led us into a situation of having to deal with all the national and state wildlife boards and everything like this. And when I first read this, although I appreciate taking care of the environment, what we're doing is, and correct me if I'm wrong, Lori, but as I read all this, what we're doing is we're funding money to another location for conservation purposes in order to allow us to work on the Aliso Creek as it fits our community. Because this then allows those wildlife people to get out of the way so we can do what's right for the community and repair the creek and do it in a manner that makes sense relative to the habitat and the environment. And so it's going to cost us $50,000 or thereabouts to pay somebody else off to allow, so they have money to do it someplace else so that we can do what we needed to do all along. And I know for some of us, that's a rather frustrating way of, it's almost like extortion to me. But that's unfortunately the way the government has now set up, and that's what happens in a lot of environmental situations. And if you really want to see that issue, just talk to the Metropolitan Water District and the amount of money they're spending up in the Bay Area on mitigation for, for the habitat, so that the 2 tunnels that we're talking about for water can even be possibly built. So this is a lot of the horse trading that goes on, and that's really what this is. And it's just, unfortunately, the way the government is set up to work nowadays. So I know many of us who are much older are not used to this kind of thing, but that's the circumstances in which we have to operate.
The other exciting thing is that we do have an extra bank, because the minimum you can purchase in credit is $50,000. We didn't need all of that for this project, but we will have extras for other things that we may need to do in and around that area in the creek.
The other thing is that we only became aware of the mitigation bank quite recently. And it would have been wonderful to to have known that previously. But I think this might finally be the light at the end of the tunnel. And it's been a long tunnel. Ray, if you wanted to speak, you didn't press your button.
I did,
I'm
but-
seeing motion over there, so, there you
shows
are.
withdrawn.
No, now you are.
Well, it says, okay. Unfortunately, there are unforeseen circumstances that happen, and being a director of Laguna Canyon Foundation and being involved with the Laguna Beach area, there are circumstances, for instance, when our gate or the wiring, that metal gate was there in the thing, it was broken and so forth and so on. This is done because of the rocks and big boulders that come through there, and there, again, are unforeseen circumstances. In Laguna Canyon, a foundation got involved in this because of certain types of materials that were being removed that were not to be removed. So this is, again, it's an unforeseen circumstance. So we have to work time and time again, and it's going to happen regardless of what we do.
Ms. Sunderland, did you want to speak on this?
I do, yes, if this is the appropriate time. Sally Sunderhouse, 580 Unit O. This was a nice surprise for a change for the creek. I live on the creek. I live about twice the distance to John Parker from this bridge. So my main question is, when? When is this really going to happen?
It's not going to happen unless we pass it.
What?
It's not going to happen unless we pass it.
Well, I can't ask the question after you pass it, right? Is that, have I got my parliamentary rules straight?
You know, the wheels of progress turn very slowly.
You think? Well,
But
you know.
Step number one.
I know
is we
there are
pass
some
it.
people on this board who think some of the people at the creek are just a bunch of whiners. But we did pay
Hey, we have been
a huge-
working with you regardless
a
of what you
huge
think.
premium for our view, and now.
By your own choice.
Right, right. So getting rid of the yellow sandbags would be a huge improvement. And obviously, I assume this means the willows can go away. The willows that were supposed to wash away in the big storms,
You're
right?
not hearing any statement from this board.
About the willows going away?
That's kind of a future step that we're also working on with a different consultant to get our permit that we have loosened up a little bit so that we can go in and clear out the willows in a different way
Fabulous.
than what we do
That's
now. But we are
great
working on that.
news.
And-
Is there a schedule?
Well, right now, we're still dependent upon getting a permit approved from the wildlife agencies. So if they say, yeah, sure, we're gonna let you use that 50,000 and buy habitat off-site, then we're good to go. And so with the approval of these funds, we're able to go back to the consultant and say, okay, go back to the agencies and say, yeah, we want to buy it. They let us do that, which I'm pretty confident that they will, but they're still their own wildlife agencies. Then we're going to be off and going, and we could probably get everything done, I think this said in about 6 months. Or sooner.
Finito.
Right.
All the work, the concrete.
Right.
And we were told it would be slight on the concrete riprap.
Right,
Okay.
right, that's all included.
Ms.
Great.
Sunderland, I know that you.
Sunderhouse, John.
Sunderhouse, excuse me. I know that you've been shown the plans. In fact, you were shown the plans before I ever saw them.
Right. And
So you have as much information as anybody sitting here.
Right. The plans I was shown, as I sent an email back to them, was that it was difficult for me to distinguish what was really new and what was not. And that question still sat out there unanswered. So it's all great news. Thank you very much. Thank you to the board if you decide to approve it. I'm sure you'll love to get rid of me if you do. Thanks. Ciao.
So Betty is recommending that we use contingency fund for the 80,222 and facility funds for the 30,000.
Part of it is the bridge repair, so that would be facility.
Correct, the 30,000.
Okay, I believe we have a motion that has been seconded. So if there's no further discussion, it's time to vote. The motion is to approve the Resolution 90-17XX, which would allow us to purchase mitigation credits and to make improvements on the damage occurred to the bridge in this season's storms. All right, have we finished voting? All right. And can you tell us the result?
The motion passed.
All right. I'd kind of like to know how well.
I had one person abstain.
All right, thank you. Okay, now we are on item 13A, which is new business, which is to entertain a motion to approve a naming policy for GRF facilities and objects. And 13A, and I'm going to turn that over to Diane. Do we need a motion first? All right. All right, somebody want to make a motion?
I have a motion from Director Troutman and a second from Director Gross.
All right. And the motion is to approve a naming policy for GRF facilities and objects. All right.
Great.
I have no speakers. Diane.
Surprise. Okay, so this is really to look into to setting up a policy. It's not that we have answers to the question. It's so that we can just, right now, we don't have our policy is to not, we can accept anything, but we can't allow any naming. So for example, just recently, we've received correspondence from someone who wanted to put a plaque on a bench in memory of a daughter. And so we just want to make a policy, or look into having a policy where we can, excuse me, where we can do that.
All right. Any further discussion?
I should also say, I guess this would allow staff to look into it and do some work on it.
Well, step number one, if we allow this policy, then step number two would be to create a small committee, task force, to look into what things could appropriately be named and putting a dollar amount on that. And this is common practice with most municipalities. It's common practice with colleges and universities. And we are, we're beginning the study of the Performing Arts Center, which is a logical place. For instance, it's a very rare performing arts center where the individual seats are not donated by interested parties. And usually there's a very small little plaque that says donated by. And when we interviewed the consultants for the Performing Arts Center, one of the first things they said, and of course you have a donor wall. And if you've gone to Disney Hall, well, obviously the hall is named after Disney, but I remember walking up the Ray Mancini staircase. So we need to join the 20th century. And, there was this attitude a while back that if you allowed anything to be in memory of or a person's name, all of a sudden we were going to turn into a cemetery. I think that's rather narrow thinking. And we are talking about a policy for GRF. The mutuals can do whatever the mutuals choose to do. So I have on my speakers list here, Diane again, okay, so now I'm Joan.
It also says we need to appoint a task force to begin work on related policies and procedures. I would suggest a combination of people from the board and from staff. I don't have any specific, but I can make it if you wish.
Well, the motion was only to allow the naming policy.
It's all part of the motion, well.
No, the motions,
Okay.
as stated,
Okay.
was to do
All
a
right.
naming policy.
Okay.
Because it's part of the staff report doesn't mean it's part of the motion.
Okay.
I think I'm correct. Okay. Beth?
There was a member on the third board years ago that really kept saying, why don't we have a naming policy? And he had been a university professor and saw that that happened in universities. It just happens in so many different arenas. I know the Crystal Cathedral, Reverend Schuler had naming on everything, on the little windows. Every single window was donated by someone.
He had it down.
He was a star. He was the expert on that. So I truly speak in favor of this motion.
All right, any further, I don't see any member comments, so let's commence voting. And we are voting on a naming policy. We're not voting on creating a task force. That'll come later. It doesn't have to happen today.
Right, how are we going to get the naming policy unless we appoint a task force? We just want to approve the ability to name them, to name objects, and appoint a task force, in essence, to start looking at the policy, to develop a policy.
All right, does somebody want to amend the motion, or do we want to vote on this as stated and then do it? Catherine?
The motion says, if you read item 13A, entertain motion to approve naming policy and establish a task force. So if we approve it, then we have the chance to establish the task force. We don't have to establish it at this point.
Okay,
We
so
don't
you're
have to-
taking the staff report recommendation, and essentially that first two sentences is that.
Yeah.
Is everyone comfortable with that as the motion?
Yeah.
And that is essentially what we're going to vote on. So we're voting on the policy plus creating a task force.
Okay.
All right. So commence voting.
Joe.
Finish voting?
Yes. The motion passed.
All right.
9 voted yes.
All right, thank you. Okay, moving right along, we are now on item 13B, which is to entertain a motion to approve up to $50,000 for the purchase of a vacuum to be funded from the existing capital plan. And you have in your packet a tear sheet showing what the vacuum looks like. And the explanation is this is going to allow to get into tighter spaces and eliminate a lot of hand labor, actually. And Lori, do you want to talk? I know Bruce is here.
Yeah, the one thing that I wanted to bring up is that the machine is powered by a 30-pound supply of propane in an interchangeable cylinder. So it will be filled at the service center when it leaves in the morning, and can be swapped out in the propane tank can be swapped out in the field. So there's no troubles with refueling or anything. Seamless.
And it's my understanding that propane as a fuel source is a relatively clean energy, as opposed to any kind of a gasoline-powered two-cycle. Yes. I would entertain a motion. I believe we've got,
We have a motion from Director Troutman and a second by Director Phelps.
all right. Any discussion on this item?
I put my name should be on.
All right, let me look. Okay, Judith.
Lori, at the last M&C meeting, Brad mentioned some $5,000 piece of equipment that's been in storage for 5 years that I thought was some kind of a,
Now, it's a floor polisher.
oh, it's a floor, it wasn't.
It's like a mopper
Okay,
cleaner.
so unfortunately,
Yeah.
that wasn't the same thing.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Joan?
Yeah. Two things. Why just one? Is this an experiment? I know, it probably is. And secondly.
They're not pushing their luck.
Yeah, I know, I understand. How safe is it with the extended vacuum cleaner cord, or not cord, but the vacuum?
Bruce?
People walk, the vacuum hose is long.
Well, I think the person driving the
Yeah,
vehicle would
well,
have
people-
that
people
for
have to be
hard-to-reach
warned.
spots.
People have to be warned that this is happening. Bruce, help me out.
Good morning. Your question was again?
The safety regarding the hose, the vacuum hose.
Can he introduce himself?
Bruce
Bruce Hartley,
Hartley.
General Services Director.
Yes.
Thank you. It's a self-propelled vacuum. It has a hose on it so that if there's a tight spot where the machine can't reach, then the operator can stop the machine, get off, take that hose 15 to 20 feet, so that if we're sweeping carports, garages, those kinds of things, they can go behind a vehicle if there's a vehicle there, go up to the front, vacuum around it, and get back on the piece of equipment.
I just want to be sure people didn't think they could walk across the hose in some place.
Now, this basically moves along fairly quickly. It's self-contained. It picks up everything, leaves nothing behind, no water or anything like that. And this allows one operator to do right now what's taking 3 people to do.
It's not like a carpet cleaning setup. It's much more of a accessory to the main sweeper.
And Bruce, this is a pilot for now, correct?
Yes, we want to test this concept out so that we don't have to have a crew and a lot of other machinery to do sweeping of garages, carports, other GRF facilities aren't swept outside. If you've seen, we have custodians doing mopping and so forth. So we're hoping that we can use this in a lot of different areas, and we think it's efficient enough that we may not need a second one. It'll travel fairly quickly, and I think it'll do a good service throughout all the mutuals and the GRF facilities.
And just to go back to the sorts of efficiencies that are being looked at by management, previously in the mutuals, the cul-de-sacs are swept by one division with the sweepers, with the street sweeper, and then the carports themselves were blown out by the landscape crew. So by getting it all under one jurisdiction and looking at it critically, is the way we're doing it efficient and makes sense? And so I think this is just another, and to those mutuals, this piece of equipment is going to benefit you directly. So I now have on the speakers list Beth.
I think my concern has been answered. When I read about this, I thought, wow, this sounds really terrific and we could really use it. But why are we just getting one in a community of 18,000 people? But since, Bruce, it's a pilot and you think that possibly the one will do it for our whole community, you've answered my question before I even stated it. Thank you.
All right, Ray.
The hose is retractable, so that eliminates what your concern was, I do believe. In other words, it's not a permanent thing that stays out there and moves along. It's retractable and used when necessary. So it's not a danger.
All right, Director Beckett.
My question is to Lori, are we going to need a new person, to hire a new person to drive this thing?
No, the existing staff will use it. We currently have 2 other street sweepers. This is a smaller one, fits into our program really well, so we use the same operators, 2 operators basically to run our sweepers. And this doesn't require any kind of special license, our other sweepers do.
Tom?
I withdrew mine.
All right, Catherine?
Yes, I assume that there's not going to be any difficulty moving this along the streets at all.
No, this is a self-propelled piece of equipment that can travel through the community. It's fully lighted and with safety lights, so forth, so we can cross through intersection. Our idea is probably to trailer transport it from the service center to the community, work through the community during the day, either bring it back in the evening or park it, come back the next day and continue on as we move through the mutuals.
How often are you expecting to have to change the waste bag?
And what provisions are you for where you're gonna take that when it's full?
Actually, it's completely self-contained, and it has a lifting, dumping hopper, so as we move through the mutuals, we just roll out one of the existing trash bins that are there. It'll lift and dump into it, roll that bin back in place, continue sweeping.
Oh,
So it's
interesting.
pretty efficient.
Thank you.
Okay, Diane?
I just wanted to highlight that this is not a request for a supplemental appropriation. It already is it falls in within money we've already approved.
All right, I don't see anyone else left on my speakers list. Press your button, Richard. Request to speak.
When you push that, it turns into withdrawal request. There you go, now you're on.
There you go.
Yeah, I speak against the motion because, thank you. I speak against this motion because a vacuum is not as effective as a blower. In other words, the machine has to be right on top of the debris that they're trying to pick up. And if a blower has an adjustment where they can reduce the velocity, so instead of blowing it all over the place, it just moves it a little. I think the same thing can be accomplished by using a blower ahead of time and then sending in the big sweeper. So I just don't see where this is going to be beneficial. I think it's going to be a waste of money. Thank you.
All right, any further discussion on this item? Then let us commence voting. And if I had to restate the motion, it's to purchase the sweeper.
Director Gross, I need you to vote, please.
Did you see a blip?
I don't see the circle come on.
Well, did your square get smaller? Yep. Are we good?
Now we are, yeah.
All right. The vote is finished, so can you tell us the results of the vote, please?
One moment. The motion passed 7-2.
All right, thank you. All right, we are now on item 13C, which is to entertain a motion to approve up to $75,000 from the Facilities Fund for the updating of the 19 restaurant and lounge. And Lori, I'm going to let you do the staff report.
Another very exciting project for the village. As you know, for Clubhouse 2, we interviewed at least 3 architects to come in and
Interior designers.
interior designers to come in and look at the area and help us with the construction and the final product, which turned out excellent. And we were hopeful that that architect we used would be interested to stay with us and continue on other projects. And Cheryl Mambeck and Associates is one of the 2 designers that we used for Clubhouse 2, and she's helped us at the 19, and her prices have been very, very competitive, and we're very excited that we're going to be able to look at working with Tony there to upgrade the carpet and the walls, and particularly to include some well-needed storage, both inside and out, and to just tidy up that whole area and make it fresh again. And so staff's recommendation is that you do approve an amount not to exceed $75,000 from the facility fund to remodel the 19 restaurant and lounge, and authorize the CEO to execute the contract.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
Okay. You have a motion from Director Troutman and a second from Director Freshley.
All right, discussion? Catherine? Actually, excuse me, Catherine, I just clicked on my speakers list and Director Beckett is first.
Oh, okay.
I'm only going to vote against this because of where the funding is coming from. Thank you.
Catherine?
Yeah, I'm supportive of this. You know, we opened the 19 restaurant, or that wasn't called the 19 restaurant at the time, but the Village Greens in 2011. So it's been 6 years. and it has a lot of activity. And so it's time, if we're going to really keep our newest facility really in the condition it needs to be in, because the maintenance has kind of declined over a period of time, and a lot of work has been done in the last year just in trying to clean it up and to clean the carpets and to make this improvement, I think, is going to be important. And I know when I go into the 19 restaurant in that area, we really need to spruce it up, and it's our responsibility, even though Tony operates the restaurant from what the contracts are, it's our responsibility to maintain the facility. So it's a worthwhile investment, and I'll be supportive of that motion.
Judith?
I just want to say, this does include replacing the chairs in the restaurant. We tried, at the cost of $3,000, cleaning them a few months ago, and they didn't clean up well. So we're going to get a better cleanable chair in the restaurant. So anyone else who's noticed those chairs, that is going to be included in it.
Joan?
Any chance there's going to be any kitchen improvements?
Here's the deal. When we negotiated the settlement of the lawsuit, Tony's only request at that point in time was that we replace a vent in the kitchen, which we have done. And Tony would probably be happy to leave all that crap in the dining room on the shelves. And we are the ones that are going to build cabinets. And my personal feeling on the kitchen is perhaps when the current leasee is no longer the leasee, that would be the time to look at the kitchen.
I think we actually have a couple appliances on order. I don't know if they're here yet, but as part of the settlement, I think there was a freezer that we got and a couple other things for the kitchen. So there's a little bit done to the kitchen.
The only way you could really deal with that kitchen would be to increase the square footage, which would mean, you're talking something beyond. So, okay, the next person on my list to speak is Judith. You already? No, I already spoke. Okay, Beth.
I speak in favor of this motion. I think that the 19 is really a valuable treasure for our community, and so many of our folks appreciate being able to go there and enjoy the scenery and have a nice meal, and it is in a state now that it's really kind of shabby, and it's our responsibility to spruce it up. And I don't know if there are other short people out here that are wondering if there are going to be new chairs on the patio. There will not be new chairs. And as a short person, I wish that there were, but they're so expensive. They're such expensive chairs for us to replace. But I'm assured that we will have strong cushions so that short people will be able to sit comfortably on the patio.
Tom?
Yeah, I speak in favor of this. Very needed, as people have said, and I would remind us that the restaurant serves this community. I mean, on the weekends, people bring their friends and relatives, and it's large parties. We really need to look at the kitchen down the road. I really would honestly ask that we need to make upgrades in that kitchen. But of course, we do need this, and I'll be voting for it.
All right, Diane?
I speak in favor of this, but I do think that we should, I see that Betty has not signed off on it, and I do wonder if it is the facilities fund, but to the extent that it wouldn't qualify to come out of the facilities fund, it would not. I mean, I'm sure she wouldn't allow it to happen, so. Right. As long, well, when we're talking about replacing some cushions, there might be a few things here and there, that's all.
But we're also doing carpeting and flooring.
Right, that's what I mean. So
And we're
depending on
also-
how it looks, if there is a part of it, to address John, if there's something that doesn't qualify to come out of a facilities fund, it won't.
And the other thing that we have addressed is the columns. We came up with a solution that Ernesto is in the process of implementing. So And our staff will be going in there and doing some painting, and there's going to be some cleaning, particularly the tile and so on. And it's a little off topic, but if you walked in this building this morning, the floors of the first floor of this building were just glistening. And anybody that hasn't noticed the level of maintenance that's just going on in this building compared to the haphazard that it used to be. But the floors this morning was like they just sparkled. And hopefully the 19 will look like that too.
Gary Morrison, 107R via Estrada. And I just want to say that the 19th is a very central and important asset to this community. And I think most of us go to the 19th hole, take our families and friends to the 19th hole and enjoy it. The one thing that, or one complaint that I hear over and over is the fact that it takes so long to get your food. And anyone who has worked in a restaurant, and I have as a back, I'm not even gonna tell you when. But anyway, at that time, we had a kitchen that was probably 3 times what that is. So, you know, there's no question that if food's gonna come out slower. And I think we need to think about producing the funds to enlarge the kitchen and just really make it a central part of the community. Thank you.
Maxine McIntosh, 68C. And I just need some clarification, and I'll bet Catherine can give it to me since she's been involved there from the beginning with that building. When we see like the ad in our Village News magazine and other nice ads from the restaurant staff, they're always saying restaurant 22 and lounge. What part of that large lounge in the building was given to the use of the manager under the new contract? You know, originally the whole lounge before the bar was built was for the members of the community. And then part of it was taken for the bar. And then has there been an official amount? Or maybe that's an expression, bar or restaurant and lounge. Maybe it just means restaurant and bar. I don't really know. I don't know what the word lounge encompasses here. Thank you.
Some people think lounge is a little more soft for bar.
Oh, okay.
And we're not going to go into the history of that lease and the square footage and so on. You were a part of all of that, and we don't have to rewrite history. It's not one of our better chapters. So what I'd like to do now is all those in favor of the motion to commence voting. Finish voting.
Director Gross.
It won't go down, I'm hitting it, and it won't be smaller.
You have to have a touch, Ray.
There we go. Okay.
You want this?
The motion passed 8-1.
All right, thank you. We are now on item 13D, which is to entertain a motion to approve a contract for Laguna Woods Village social media and reputation management for the amount of $25,000 and authorize the CEO to execute the contract. So do I have a motion?
I have a motion from Diane Phelps and a second from Tom Circle.
All right, discussion. I have no speakers. Richard's the one that pulled it off. So Diane is on the speakers list, so.
I'll withdraw if Richard wants to speak first.
Yes.
Richard, press the speaker button.
Your speaker
No, I'm not talking about the microphone. If we're going to have this technology, we all have to use it. So press the button to speak.
Request to speak, you have to hit that.
I hit,
There you go. You have to vote.
When it changes color, then it works.
Okay, now you're on my speakers list.
Okay.
We're all techie right, so please speak.
okay, I speak against this motion because I feel we already have somebody that has been recording all the documents with social media. And I don't know how many people use Facebook. I find it not very useful, and I'm sure a lot of people are of the same opinion. So I think we're trying to force an issue that doesn't exist. A few people use it, yes, but of course, I am a little prejudiced because I get about 350 emails a day, so I don't have time to fool around with Facebook, except when my family sends me a message. But other than that, I don't see any point in creating an issue that doesn't exist. Now, $25,000 is $25,000. Like one politician in Washington said, $25,000 here, $25,000 there. Pretty soon you're talking about real money. And
That was Everett Dirksen, and it was $1 million here, $1 million there.
yeah. But anyway, I just don't see the point. Thank you.
Diane?
I speak in favor of this. I attended the media meeting, a media and communications meeting, and the report I thought was a little misleading in that saying that there was little interest made from residents in social media. That surprised me, and I didn't even think that was what was discussed was said at the meeting. But I think there's going to be a move to get some of the club web pages off of our website and onto Facebook. And the other thing is that to say that we have somebody now that's looking at all this, the problem is that this is way too overwhelming. Either we hire more people to do it in-house, or we pay this company, and this is what they do, to actually do it for us. So I speak in favor of it.
Yes.
Joan?
I too was at the meeting, and I'm in favor of the motion because it's another way for residents to actually communicate with us. And more people are now familiar with how to use Facebook, and this may just be a precursor to what's going to happen on the web, but right now it will enable us to get more direct communication, and we need someone to monitor those communications, and that's what I understand this is for. One thing.
Beth?
I speak in favor of this motion. You know, each step along the way, we're moving more into the 21st century, and so many of our citizens out there are certainly involved with Facebook, and our clubs are looking toward, that's the next step, that they will have their websites on Facebook and not on our website. So this is definitely a positive step, in my opinion.
Chuck, if I remember at the meeting, Heather gave a figure. What sticks in my head is that we have something like 6,000 Facebook users in our community.
It says it on the report.
Okay, so that's not an insignificant number. That's 1/3 of our population.
And they're engaged 4 or more times a week, which is a lot.
Yeah. All right.
Dick Rader, 270D. I wonder if we could ask Chuck to elaborate a little bit more on what this encompasses. Because if I understood it correctly, it wasn't just the fact that the clubs would use Facebook. I thought it had more to do with some things with regarding marketing and things like that. Could we ask him to elaborate? Because I haven't heard any of the board members address that.
Had you been at the committee meeting?
I was at the
All right, well, then you know the answer to the question you're asking.
I'm asking for the community.
So Chuck, help me out a little bit. So what Brand Tailors will do, and they have a team of very young people that can do this in their sleep pretty much, but they will be checking Facebook on a daily, continual basis for 5 months to look for Laguna Woods Village, the Laguna Woods name, and make sure that we're responding very positively. So Dick, you're right. That's part of our marketing and our branding. And then at the same time, under YouTube, we'll be doing the same thing under YouTube. And we are very active on YouTube, but it's not as organized as it should be. And what Brian Taylor's will do will organize it. And the exciting thing about that is that we do so much on Village TV that goes on YouTube, and it'd be nice to have it in a central location to find and brand it. And so that'll be an ongoing daily basis for 5 months with them as well.
All right, I'm not. All right. All those in favor, please register your vote. The resolution is to approve a contract in the amount of $25,000 to approve for Laguna Woods social media and reputation management for a 5-month experiment. So commence voting.
Director Freshley? Director Beckett? The motion passed 8-1.
All right, thank you. We are now on item 11, or it's now 13E. It's the former 11D. Entertain a motion to renew the Bank of America borrowing resolution required for workman's compensation insurance letter of credit in the amount of $300,000. Director Beckett.
Without objection, I'll waive the reading of this very lengthy resolution, and just read aloud the first resolve further paragraph on page 1.
I have no idea what you're saying.
We have a resolution here, and ordinarily the secretary would read the resolution.
No, it's an old one. This is not a new resolution. I believe that's an old resolution.
Well, customarily, a resolution, new or old, is read out before we vote on it. But,
How about a vote on not reading the resolution? All those in favor of not reading the resolution?
We're not doing it that way.
We have done this year after year after year. We need to do this because it's a requirement of us having workman compensation insurance for our 1,000 employees. And anybody that had concerns about any mismanagement of this $300,000 by Bank of America, we passed a special resolution last year, I believe, because of you, that resolution was passed. So I don't understand why we are dealing with this. This is like a housekeeping measure to keep our insurance.
And I think that it's just the terminology. This is actually their format and their title. It's not a resolution like we would pass. We're not recommending a resolution. This is their format.
There's a resolution.
Joan, I have a speakers list and I have no speaker requests.
I'm moving.
Okay.
I move we not read this resolution because it's standard, it's a standard procedure for every year.
We have a second from Director Troutman.
All right. Any further discussion on not reading the resolution? All right, all those in favor, commence voting.
Oh, that's the main motion that's coming up on the screen.
Oh. Can we do it by hand?
You have to take a hand vote.
We'll change it.
All right, in lieu of technology, all those in favor of the motion to not read the resolution, please raise your hand. Those opposed? All right, it's 9-1 in favor of not reading the resolution. So now we're going to the motion to to renew the Bank of America borrowing resolution for workman's comp, letter of credit, the amount of $300,000. That has been moved and seconded, I believe.
Yeah.
Any further discussion?
It didn't come up so I could request to speak on it. It's because she's already got it blocked for voting, and I can't request for speech.
Okay, well,
Now I can. There we go.
Retry. Go ahead.
I did.
okay, and I just completely blew my screen. I now am blue. Oh, Chuck. I tried that and didn't, I guess it didn't have the touch. Okay, great. Speakers would be what I want, yeah. All right, Director Beckett.
Thank you, Mr. President. The way that you've explained this to us is that it's a $300,000 letter of credit for workers' compensation if we need it. And it says far more than that. I would like to point out that it says that we are authorizing 2 of our directors to sign for commodity or equity swaps, caps, floors, collars, foreign exchange transactions, currency swaps, cross-currency swaps weights, currency options, securities, puts, calls, collars, options, forwards, any combination of options with respect to these and so on and so on. And what's that got to do with money, $300,000 letter of credit for workers' comp?
Catherine.
Yeah, and I, I understand where you're coming from, John. Unfortunately, as it says right at the top of the page, that's the form Bank of America uses. They're our bank, and if we want to have workman's comp, and the requirement from the requirement from the state board is that we carry workman's compensation, and in order for us to do so, we have to have a standing letter of credit with the bank of which we do business. And so we don't have the option of telling them that we want a special letter of credit. I mean, most banks have their standard form, and that's what we're required to submit to. And you did pass a resolution in 629, or let's see, a resolution that basically requires that anything different or any drawing on those funds requires 2/3 vote of the board of directors. And this was in January 8th of 2016. And so
we dealt with this exact same issue a year ago.
That's right.
And created that resolution to take care of any,
Right.
So we're reinventing the wheel.
So we really have a standing resolution that says no funds can be withdrawn or used from that letter of credit without 2/3 vote of the board of directors of GRF. So it's already protected. Your concern is, and I understand it, but your concern is already protected by the resolution that is a standing resolution in the community. So then that resolution has not been eliminated.
All right, all those in favor of the,
Let's make a motion. You guys make it a motion.
You need
I
to
thought
make-
that was your old
You're
one.
gonna need to make a motion, John.
All right, well, first, do we have a motion on the floor? All right, so I want to entertain a motion to renew the Bank of America borrowing resolution required for workman's compensation insurance letter of credit in the amount of $300,000.
Okay, I have a motion from Director Circle and a second from Director Phelps.
All right, discussion, Director Beckett.
I'm concerned that we're not protected. For those of you who are not familiar with the Corporations Code 7214, it says that if the bank gets a document, a contract with two signatures from two corporate officers, that they're not obliged to inquire as to whether those two corporate officers actually have the authority to do that. And unless we attach that as part of this resolution and give it to the bank, or the old resolution, then it's possible that something could happen that we don't really want to approve of. That's my objection. Thank you.
All right, all those, may we,
She said to vote for her.
you can't do that. Can't do that. Catherine?
Yeah, John, if you look at page 3 of 3 of item 11D, very clearly there's a corporate secretary certificate. And if you look at that, which is basically an attachment to that letter of credit, I'm assuming is going to be submitted, and the second paragraph says, I further certify that said resolutions are still in full force and effect and have not been amended or revoked, and that the specimen signatures appearing below are the signatures of the officers authorized to sign for the corporation virtue of such resolution, and these resolutions are that one which puts the limitation in, is my understanding. So we're covered.
I don't read it that way. I think it just says that this particular resolution, she is certifying that we were all here and we approved it.
You don't want to know what I'm thinking. We have to wait for the potty break people. No, that's like voting for someone.
You know a song or a dance? I can mark her as absent.
I'm not Cy Wellickson.
John, if, to overcome that objection, if we wish to, in that.
I'd rather wait for the vote.
I was just going to suggest that we might put in the corporate secretary certificate a referral to the resolution that was passed that refers back to the 2/3 vote, if we wanted to.
We had 10 people last year deal with this.
I know you did.
I think we're just giving far too much
but maybe even
credence
okay,
to
maybe
something
going,
that shouldn't even be discussed.
Yeah, but maybe going forward, we might want to put that in there so that the bank is alerted to that situation. Because John's right with the corporations code,
So Betty's saying it's a standard bank form. That's why you have the other resolution to require board approval. So we'll make sure we pass the original resolution on with this form to them.
Right. Yeah, and I think that way then they have that, the bank has that understanding.
Right.
Okay.
Okay, this must be making fascinating television. Judith, we need your vote. Beth, we need your vote. And we are preparing to vote. We're preparing to vote on the motion to renew the Bank of America borrowing resolution required for Verquin's compensation insurance letter of credit for $300,000. All of those in favor of the motion commence voting, or all commence voting, period. All right, finish voting.
She needs to announce it.
The motion passed 8-1.
All right, thank you. So now, I believe we're actually up to committee reports. So excuse me? Yes. Report of the Finance Committee, Diane.
Okay.
Diane has been gone for the last 2 weeks, so let's see. Okay, so I'm not going to see it on this monitor, but I'll see it up there.
You will, you will.
Okay.
Here?
Yes, got it. Okay, let's say we did not have a meeting in, well, okay, let me do this. Okay, so I'll start off with slide 1. Through the reporting period of May 31st, 2017, total revenue for GRF was $16.5 million compared to expenses of $16.7 million, resulting in an unfavorable variance of $184,000. Next slide. Okay. This next chart shows activity and operations separate from reserves. After backing out depreciation, which is not funded through operations, we can see bottom line, we had an operating deficit of $818,000 through the end of May. GRF planned a deficit for this fiscal year as a means of returning prior year operating surplus to its members. Slide 3. With an favorable bottom line of $184,000 compared to a planned deficit of $1,000 through May, GRF financial results were worse than budgeted by $183,000, with the most significant variance is attributable to we had more expense for temporary help and overtime required to address service levels in resident services resulting from higher call volumes and extended hours. We had additional legal fees due to a payment of a settlement. We also had higher consulting fees for support of financial software system, and we had recruiting fees required to fill open positions. We also had lower golf greens fees because fewer rounds were played due to inclement weather. Slide 4. On this pie chart, we show the non-assessment revenues received to date of $4.3 million by category, starting with the largest revenue-generating operation, which is broadband services, down to trust facilities fee, golf fees, etc. You want to go to slide 5? Expenses to date of $16.8 million are also shown on a pie chart, with our largest categories being compensation, depreciation, and then cable down onto utilities and so on. And then the next slide, please. Last but not least, this is the slide that shows the reserve and contingency fund balances as of May 31st. The book balance was $32.7 million, but after we take out the $2.6 million that we have added to reserves and the I take that back. Additions to reserves have totaled just over $2.6 million year-to-date. 1.5 is from assessments, almost $1 million is from the trust facilities fees, plus $155,000 was from interest we received. So even though book balance-wise, it shows that we have almost $33 million, in fact, if you take out our work in progress and our remaining appropriations, we actually have a balance of $13.3 million. So sorry about that, a little rough around the edges. Okay, so you can take away that slide. So the only other things I think I should mention is that we have our next Finance Committee meeting is on August the 23rd at 1:30. I just want to remind everyone that Merrill Lynch, BlackRock will be there, and they'll make a presentation to all of the mutuals. So everyone's encouraged to attend. Our next budget meetings that we have, let's see, I think on July the 10th at 1:30, we have an all-board meeting. And then on July 13th, we're going to review fees at 1:30.
No, 13th is fees.
Right. I thought there's still one on the 10th.
The 10th, special all-board directors meeting for the business plan, and directly following that, GRF has a planning committee.
Okay. And then we also have on Monday, July 17th at 9:30.
It doesn't go that far.
Which doesn't go that far, but that's a discussion also of our business plan. So that's all I have to say, except that I had a very nice vacation.
Director Beckett.
Back on slide 2, it says that total expense from the, I assume these are all the reserve funds, and column 2, it shows $76,000. When we get to our capital plan meeting, are we going to have a figure that's more in line with what's actually going on?
Anybody need to see slide 2?
Yeah. Okay, so you're saying which about slide 2?
See this number 76 over here under facilities, reserve funds?
Total expenses.
Total expenses, $76,000 for the first 5 months of the year.
Got it. And that's because that's the difference between the book value. So the book balance doesn't include any expenditures that were made for things that are still in process. It doesn't take it out of the reserves. That's why the slide 6 actually takes it out of reserves, so that you can see what we've spent to date. So does that make more sense? If you flip over to slide 6, you can see there's 9.4 million that's been spent on work in progress, and there's 9.9 million that's remaining appropriations. But the 9.4 is for this year and prior years on any item on anything that hasn't closed.
Well, would it be possible to get a number for this year? Or
Sure.
last year, or any year?
Yeah, any given year. Right. That's available. I mean, sure, that can get pulled.
Well, it would be nice if we could have that for our budget meeting.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Diane. Now we're at community activities. Beth?
Thank you. Community activities meeting last week was a long meeting with lots of things to discuss. I started out with my chair's remarks saying that we have so many more activities that are being offered today through the Recreation Department, and an example of which is the 4th of July celebration that we had, which was kind of extended and expanded upon from what we've had in previous years. So lots of enhancements going on in our activities area, looking at tennis and the gym being moved downstairs. All of that has to do with the vision and the goals that are really clearly stated by our Recreation Director, Brian Gruner. One of the things that as an educator, I really was happy to discuss with Brian is that they have, they just completed last Saturday, training all of their staff. They had a service company come and do the training of customer service, so that all of our recreation staff has had an opportunity to be trained in how to best serve the customers, which is our community. So then, what are some other things that we discussed in community activities? The men's golf club tournament, $43,000 was raised, which was really a testament to that club and their president, Bill Blaine, thank goodness. $43,000, which went to the foundation of Laguna Woods Village, which is Neighbors Helping Neighbors. Another thing that was discussed is the Par 3 office is being renovated. Recreation and Transportation Department, I know I've talked about this before, but those two departments are collaborating to put together excursions that are really well received by our community. There was an excursion to San Juan Capistrano, 40 people participated in that. 75 people participated in going to Laguna Beach. And just a little tip about what's coming up. July 12th, there'll be an excursion to the Sawdust Festival, August 9th to an Angels game, September 24th to Soka for a jazz concert. One of the things that began, I think, a year ago, we started talking with the club presidents. That started, I think, Margaret Klein, when she was chair of CAC, started that. And on June 14th, there was their club president meeting, and they discussed recreation policies regarding the clubs. the staff has started and will be putting together a review of recreation policies with an idea of streamlining it and making it more user-friendly for us. And once they've put together their ideas, they'll be presenting it to our board, and we'll probably have a mini committee that will be looking at the policies, the recreation policies that the staff has put together as a suggestion. Another thing that Brian Bruner has been looking at is cross-training his staff, which is, as an educator, I've got to say, this is another really wonderful idea. Cross-training and cross-department collaboration, educating folks, and what that leads to empowerment of the members of the staff for recreation. It was a really good meeting, and I was still suffering a little bit of jet lag from my vacation, but good to be back. Thank you.
Thank you, Beth. For Media and Communications, Joan Millman's going to give the report.
Well, some of the main things we did in media and communications, you've already seen the results. One of the first things was to recommend this approval for the social media and reputation management program, which we voted on today. Also, we endorsed changing the name of TV6 to Village TV. Village Television, excuse me. Yes, yes. And I'm sure it may change a little bit. Anyway, another thing that came up were the town hall meetings, which you wish to be informed about. We will be having a town hall meeting here in the boardroom on August 17th, 4:30 p.m. on technology in the village. And that will be led by Chuck, of course. He's nodding, yes. And finally, we talked about the videos of candidates for election purposes, which we voted on, and I'm happy to say that passed. Then you will also be seeing little 30-second spots to get everyone to vote, and that also we've approved. And that these little PSAs have been done by our advisors, Marvel and Carmen, and several other people from the video club. And so that's kind of concludes my report at this point.
All right, thank you, Joan. The next report is landscape. And while we did not have a meeting during this past month, there are a couple of items that I want to discuss. The Garden Center Club has on June 8th, June 22nd, and June 29th had an announcement in the Globe. There will be no Garden Center open house next week. GRF and VMSI have decided that they are not ready to have it and it has to be canceled. This is very interesting because the Garden Center president came to the landscape meeting and informed the landscape committee that they were going to have an open house. The Garden Center Club, GRF, VMSI, never was going to have an open house. The Garden Center Club. So suddenly, 3 times in the Globe appears that the reason there's no open house is because GRF and VMSI decided not to have it. We never decided to have one, no less not have one. So this kind of inaccuracy is a bit annoying. But I will say that if you have not been to the Garden Center, they're really, really looking different. In Garden Center 1, the office has been moved. The storage shed that was at the far, far end of the parking lot has been moved to a more usable location. A lot of additional garden plots have been created. And the signage has been greatly improved. But the biggest thing that's happened is we now have hired an employee that is exclusive to the Garden Center, not a full-time employee, but about a half-time position. And her name is Sherry Curlett. and she will divide her time between Garden Center 1 and Garden Center 2. And she comes to us from the city of Mission Viejo, and she's got a good handle on keeping track of leases and, who's supposed to use what. And so we're expecting a much, much higher level of management. And previously, a full-time landscape person was taken and assigned to Garden Center 1 and Garden Center 2. So we now have 2 employees that are totally responsible for that facility, one from a maintenance standpoint, one from a management standpoint. There's still some things to be done, but I think you'll see a big, big improvement. The next landscape meeting is on July. Oh, and the information that we passed today on the creek, I mean, that is like a gift from heaven. So I hope that is really going to, anybody that's been involved with that situation, this has been an ongoing issue for years. But our next meeting is July 20th, 9 a.m. So thank you. And the next committee report is Judith, I believe.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There was no meeting for the M&C GRF in June. However, the committee members received an update on the project log. And GRF has identified 7 items out of the 49 projects on this huge project log. There's about 6 pages of this. As you can see, the boardroom renovation is complete with the exception of working out some of the bugs in the technology and continued education of staff and directors on how to use this technology. We have invoiced $263,127 already of the $301,000 budget for this room. Another priority was the simulcast antenna that we purchased, that Brad talked a little bit about, and it'll bring our broadband and internet operations back into the 21st century, ultimately delivering a higher standard of service to our residents. The $315,600 for this project comes from the 2017 Capital Plan Equipment Fund. Another priority we addressed is the lawn bowling courts, and as many of you know, both courts have failed due to poor construction the first time. The project is still out to bid, and we will be discussing that in a closed meeting. Another item for $11,000 from the 2016 capital plan. We're hoping to get Clubhouse 7's wooden floors refinished, hopefully in July. That's iffy. We may run into the first part of August. And then staff is working with the user groups for Clubhouse 7 on that project. The Garden Center 1 and 2 project have a number of things going on there, and I don't know, John covered all that I think we thought was important there. The automatic gate system, however, is ready to be installed. It's just pending the garden members' notification. We'll all be getting a letter when we're going to have to start using our cards to get into the 2 garden centers. Now, that project was budgeted at $400,000. The next highest priority is the pickleball courts in Partial 3. I noticed that they were out there yesterday doing some surveying already, and the project design is in progress by Gordon Engineering. The initial draft will be going to the city within the next 2 weeks, and the 2015 budget for that project approved $600,000. Another priority was the HVAC system for this building here, the CC Center, and that's in progress. And as staff is working with IDS to keep this project on budget of $533,400, and that came out of the 2014 Facilities Fund. Finally, staff is working diligently on Clubhouse 3, which is our PAC, Performing Arts Center. The workshops for the user groups will get underway this week, and the engineering staff and the user groups will meet one-on-one to give their input as to what their needs are. I'm going to name some groups that have already signed up that we're going to meet with this week on the 6th, 7th, and the 10th. If I don't call the name of your group and you have an interest in use Clubhouse 3 frequently, get in touch with me. On the 6th, we'll be talking to the Old Pros, the Theater Guild, the Dance Club, Community Concerts Club, Village String Band, Village Chorale, Sunshine Lutney, Ukulele Club, Village Symphony, And on the 7th, we'll see the Billiards Club, the Women's Billiards Club, the Film Club, the Art Association. On the 10th, we'll see Clubhouse 3 staff and management, Friends of the Village, the Association of Condos and Co-ops, ACC, Center for Spiritual Living, First Christian Church, Encore Bible Study, Village Church Bible Study, the Chinese American Club, the Hearing Well Club, the Ocean Club, and the Camera Club. So if you want to be seen and you're not on that list, you better get a hold of me because we've already allotted 15 to 20 minutes for each group on these 3 days. So let me know if you feel you've been forgotten. In 2017, we put aside $1,028,000 for the PAC out of the 2017 capital plan. In 2015, we still have $150,000. And for 2016, we had $13,000 plus other miscellaneous unspent budgets. So we're close to having already $1.5 million to put towards the PAC. I've mentioned this a couple of times. When SVA gave us their report, they broke it down into 4 sections. The immediate needs, like fire and safety and ADA, which came to $514,013. Then the immediate building deficiencies, that was $979,238. Those 2 immediate needs right there are almost $1.5 million, which is what we already have. So at our first budget meeting for 2018, we added to the capital plan $2.5 million. So the third category here, they call it program augmentation. SVA is saying these are our nice-to-haves, $4,166,525. Well, we only have $2.5 million to put towards that. So that's why it's going to be very important after we meet with all the user groups, then we'll get to, and the committee members are invited, by the way, the PAC committee members. First, we'll meet with the committee and then the board and take all the input from the workshops. We'll triage all that information and prioritize it according to the money we have and the immediate needs versus the wants. And then staff will come up with what they can do with what money we have, which will be the $2.5 million and the $1.5 million, or $4 million, and see what we can get for that. So there's also the 4th group is a dream list for $1.8 million, and we're probably not going to even touch that. But at least for the $4 million, we'll probably be able to get the seats. And now that we passed the donor policy and the naming policy, we'll be able to get more money in, like for seats in that building. And so we may just be able to cover this whole $4.2 million. And the next meeting for MNC is July 20th, and we'll be looking at the Clubhouse 2 Annex building as one of our things on the agenda. And concludes my report.
Thank you, Judith.
Afternoon of July 20th?
That's yes, because in the
1:30.
morning is landscape.
1:30, in this room.
Thank you.
All right, Tom?
Yeah, Mr. President, I just have a pretty quick report. We met on June 22nd, discussed several issues. Chief talked about on the gate access update, we're looking into maybe having the contractors pay for business passes, which will give us more control of who's here, when, where they're working, and have them pay for it. He put together a traffic collision report, and it was real surprising that we have backing up problems in our community. That seems to be the #1 cause of accidents in Laguna Woods Village. I've asked him to analyze it and look at it a little bit more because I'd like to know exactly where these accidents are occurring so we can focus our traffic efforts there. We talked about the personnel protection equipment, the handcuffs and pepper spray is arriving, and we have had extensive training by an expert So you don't have to worry about them not knowing how to use it. They will, and based upon the law and the situations. We're reaching out a lot to volunteers for building captains and putting on trainings.
Excuse me,
That's
Tom. Dick, do you think you could carry your conversation on somewhere else?
Okay, with that, I'll continue. The RV lot, believe it or not, is starting to kind of clean itself up a bit. They put in a lot of effort going through there and discovering who needs to be there and who doesn't. That's a work in progress. Of course, today's commendation was discussed under noteworthy incidents, and we had discussed the accommodations and the actions of our people we honored this morning. I'm very enthused about doing that. There's a lot that these people are now doing that are making it safer for all of us. Amazing what you can do when you train them and change some policies and send them out to work. I ended the meeting with urging all the committee members to really liaison with their board and our committee. Sometimes other directors will ask me questions about issues that we discussed at a meeting, and I'm kind of surprised that their representative on the committee didn't tell them. So I tried to get them to do just that. Tim Moy and I continue to work real well together. I have the utmost confidence in him. I'm very happy with his ability to supervise and his ability to make sure our supervisors supervise. I'm very happy with his efforts. Thank you, Mr. President.
Director Beckett.
Yes, I want to thank Director Circle and Chief Moy for
No comment.
meeting with each of the officers individually and to review the policy and emphasize the seriousness of carrying these pepper sprays and handcuffs. And I was a little bit nervous when we first were going to bring it about, but now my worries are set aside. Thank you.
All right. Traffic.
Yeah, first off, I'd like to thank you for spending the first half of the traffic hearing the other day. You took care of the first half for me. It's interesting to know what's really going on there. In the morning session, we had 13 people, and in the afternoon session, we had 10. And it's amazing, even though Chief Moy and I have put out the recommendations on how to handle traffic situations, it's still amazing. For instance, we had one individual whose wife, he had just moved in recently, and his wife came to the stop sign in her car. He was behind him. He was behind her. She went through and so did he. And he said, well, after all, she stopped. It's okay if I do it. So we explained to them, and you know, it's amazing. When the people see the videos and the pictures that we show them and explain what's going on, we're actually getting thank yous. And it's proof of that because we already, in speed over 11 to 15 miles an hour, we only have 148 up to now. Last year, we had 344. So it's really working, and we're trying to help people. There are other situations that people don't understand. So Chief Moy and I are going to be meeting on Thursday morning to take up a special issue that Mr. Circle indicates. He wants to set up something regarding the golf carts. And this is very intriguing and interesting. This is an old book, but we want to upgrade it. And last week and week before, well, for some period of time, there are two individuals that physically drive on Santa Maria in the middle of the roadway with a golf cart, which is illegal. 4 days ago, I was coming out Santa Maria and watched this guy come around the corner in a golf cart in the middle of the road, turn onto Moulton. And it just happened to be that there was enough stoppage of vehicles. I kind of slowed people down. I stopped him and said, sir, you're putting yourself in danger. And he said, well, I have no place else to go. And I said, do you see the sign right in front of us where I stopped you? What does it show you? There's a person walking in the golf cart, and it's on the curb, on the sidewalk, not the street. Oh, my God, I never saw it. And there are at least two of those. So it's very important that we put this together, so the chief and I are working again to make sure that we put out this more information. And it's getting to be better and better. But here again, we still have speed in excess of 15 miles an hour, 25. Stop signs are going down. Thank goodness, they're really helping, but we have to do some more improvement on it. It's only 114 so far this year. Unlicensed drivers, still 21, and people figure because they're 80 years old, they don't need a driver's license in here. So we try again to explain them, and that information is specifically stated in the booklet. In addition, now here's something, expired registration. Here again, people think because they're in here, they don't need to register the vehicle. There's insurance involved, which means it's protecting the rest of you folks. That has to be done. And now handicaps, unfortunately, people are increasing. We had all of last year only 20, and so far this year we've had 35. People parking in handicapped spaces and so forth and so on. And again, the booklets are available. Like I say, here's the one for the golf cart trail, and we're going to improve that, Tom, the way you want. And if you look in this booklet, we had a situation where United is a little different in parking than we are. In many places, they don't have curbs, so people park on the sidewalk. So we're going to be putting together a program that indicates there's tar on the roadway, there's cement on a walkway. It's very simple. Don't park over here. So we're going to be doing that. And Chief Moy, like you said, Tom, Chief Moy is doing a tremendous job, and he's going to continue to do it. And again, like I say, we're going to try to put together something that will make it even more understandable and better for everybody. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Ray. And finally, mobility and vehicles, Joan.
Okay.
I'm sorry, Judith.
I'm not sure if I should be addressing Director Circle or Director Gross, but a couple months ago, I went to staff, and there was a request by Denny Welch and several other people that drive golf carts to have, I don't know if it'd be security or who, put on a class for people who drive golf carts. And you, oh yeah, you said you were going, when is that coming?
Been instructed to do that next.
Okay.
Yes, that's exactly what we're going to be doing. We'll be improving this booklet and putting on a program. So Chief Moy will be talking about this tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock.
At tomorrow's meeting?
To answer your first question?
Oh, that was you. Okay, I was wondering. Thank you.
Joan.
Okay, at our meeting for mobility and vehicles, Mr. Hartley introduced our new Transportation and Maintenance Services Manager, Drew Harrell. He'll be in charge of transportation, vehicles, custodial, and paving work centers. Recently, 2 electric charging vehicle stations have been installed behind the community center, which was mentioned. There was a proposed budget for purchases of vehicles, which Mr. Hartley presented, and he informed us of the steps they were taking to evaluate those vehicles. Well, several of the things include the number of miles, the hours operated, the maintenance repair costs, and downtimes for repairs and physical assessment. And although the list is long at this point, after Mr. Bradley Hudson gets after it, I'm sure it won't be quite so long. Anyway, it was very interesting. We have buses that will be replaced eventually. Our buses that we have gotten through the state, we have a certain limit on how long we have to keep them and how many miles they have to go. They don't just automatically disappear. An item came up about ADA, about bus shelters, and many people want to have bus shelters along the way on the roads. But the staff recommended not to do it because several reasons. One is the cost. Each shelter itself just costs approximately $12,000 just by itself, and another $15,000 or $30,000 to put it up because of the ADA requirements. ADA requirements mean that we have to have sidewalk ramps. If you look at the at the shelters, at the clubhouses, 1 and 5 in particular. You'll see what he's talking about. So they are discouraging that sort of thing right now. Easy Rider reported that destination shopping and bus excursions are very popular. Mission San Juan excursion last month was very successful, and the reservations for the Laguna Beach excursion filled up within the first few hours of opening. I want to let you know that Bruce Hartley and his team are constantly working at improving the efficiency of our bus services and are always on the lookout for suggestions and concerns. Special bus trips can be requested even by groups, and occasionally are, so that you don't really have to request a bus. If you want to go as a group somewhere, you can have a small group just by requesting one of the B buses or plan a ride bus. How to track how many people ride the buses is still a problem, and the staff is working to get these trends up for us. Sorry. The date of our next meeting will be Wednesday, August 2nd, in 2017.
Judith?
Yeah, Joan, can you again, for the audience, the people that do ride the buses at home, the request for a bus ride is only like between 9:30 and 11:30 sometime? What's the hours? Because if you call and you need a special ride after that, you can't use that. Can we extend those hours? Do we have a capability of staff and buses to extend those plan a ride hours? Do you know?
I don't know.
It hasn't come up.
You can, there, okay. In addition to the planner ride, there are also handicapped buses, which are specifically for individuals that can't ride the regular buses and need special times. So you could call for that kind of an appointment. That's different.
That's
The
different.
planner ride is intended to cover the hours before and after our regular times.
Okay. Has anyone even asked to have you extend those? Is there any way you can put it on
Not
some
that I
agenda?
know of. Lori, do you?
Not that I've heard of. Bruce Hartley's the best one to talk to.
Okay.
So let me talk to him about that.
Okay, I've got a big request for that. Okay, thanks.
All right, thank you, Joan. And the next item on the agenda is future agenda items. All right, there doesn't seem to be any at the moment. So now we're at director comments, and I'll start with Richard.
No comment.
Ray?
Yeah, GRF has nothing to do with Laguna Canyon. However, I'm still connected with them. So I make sure we make 50 copies, put them at the front desk for people that are wanting to go on these tours and so forth and so on. That is done every month. And when those run out, they make more. Thank you.
Director Beckett.
I'd like to apologize to the chair for saying you wish.
Accepted. Joan?
Good meeting, no comment.
Catherine? Tom?
I would just like to personally thank you for your comments concerning the loss of my friend Bill Blaine. I was very close to him, and we're having a hard time dealing with it. We're really finding out he did a lot more for this community than some people even thought. He was totally, and he spoke a lot about his relationship with John Parker, how it had grown from rather a tough start.
Contempt to...
But the man had passion, and he cared about people, and he wanted to make sure everybody was, having a good time and doing, and he worked hard, and we're going to miss him. Thanks, John.
Right. Diane? Beth?
I agree with Director Circle. It's just amazing. And when my other hat is on from the foundation, I'm just so grateful for the men's golf club and to Bill.
All right. I have no comment, so this meeting is in recess until the executive. Oh, I'm Judith, I'm so sorry.
I didn't have much to say. I just want to thank the 6 people left in the audience for sticking with us to this late hour. Thank you.
Recess till executive session.
Ooh, purple. My daughter.